All right. Without further ado, here we are. One of the most anticipated guests and streams that we typically have every year. Kind of been an annual thing. People are excited for the Gary Dobyns stream where we get everything answered about rods, fishing rods that we did or didn't want to know. Here's some good stories and have the man on. But I'm not going to belabor this any longer, and we're just gonna have Gary hop on. What's going on,
Hey, glad
Gary?
to be good. Glad to be here, guys.
Yeah, awesome. We had to work through some connections and some internet and some phone, but we're here. Fashionably
Well,
late,
you
but we're ready to rock and roll now.
I always struggle with technology, so I think we're good though.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if Clark Green can figure it out, you can figure it out. That's what I always say.
Oh, that's for sure. I mean, anybody can beat Clark.
All right, people are saying hi. People are excited about the chat here. Uh, Terry wants to know. Batiste wants to know who's outside turning the crank on your generator.
Believe it or not, guys, I'm in California right now. I come out of Texas Sunday night, come back and watch the grandkids play a little basketball and hang out with them a little bit longer before I drive back to Texas again.
Right on. Very cool. So tonight's HellaBass Live is always presented by Arsenal Fishing and boosted by Powerhouse Lithium. We're just gonna no agenda. We're just gonna talk a little bit about rods, what's new with Dobyns, and probably answer a whole ton of viewer questions tonight. Um, I guess to get things started here, I guess one of the things that's new, pretty new, is the Kaden Travel Rods. I think that was been in the talks for quite some time, but they just hit the website a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, we've had them out for probably a month or so. It was something we asked to do for a long, long time, and I just don't know how that's going to work, to be honest with you. But there's so many guys making trips down to Mexico and trips to Brazil. So when we made the travel series rods, we went kind of heavy on the heavier rods, the 795, 806 swim bait rods, and a 745 casting rod. I mean, those guys aren't going down to Mexico to catch little bass.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the one thing that I was impressed was the number of models from like super finesse to swim baits and flipping sticks and big cranking sticks and everything in between.
Well, we know we got a lot of guys who are going to be carrying trout rods and spinning rods and stuff like that, fishing ponds, and so that was kind of a gimme. But once I got into it, and I start listening to these guys really talk. I mean, flying with long rods is just a nightmare. So
Mm-hmm.
the swim bait rods, I think, just a great addition. We'll see. I mean, truthfully, the sales are better in the swim bait rods than they are across the line. Right now, the heavier rods are selling for us. Could be the time of year, but so far so good. And we can always expand if we're missing something. We can always throw another one in there if we get enough requests.
Yeah, good reminder from Bass Assassin. If you guys are enjoying, hit the like button so we can get a few more eyes on Gary tonight. We're well over 100 live viewers already and climbing. So good, good. See, we had a couple early questions here. I guess comment. Patrick says these Dobyns live streams account for 95% of my rod arsenal.
That's pretty awesome.
Clark says he's just here for the donuts.
Too late. They're all gone.
Kyle wants to know if today is the day that Hella and Gary talked me into buying my first Dobyns rod.
About Say that one more time.
He's asking himself, is today the day Hella and Gary talked Kyle into buying his first Dobyns rod?
Oh man, Kyle, you're behind the scenes, buddy. I mean, I'm sure we got a rod that'll fit you. We've only got like somewhere around 250 models, so I'm sure we got a rod that'll work for you.
Nice. All right. So Bass Assassin says I recently bought the XP 744C, which is the jig special. Besides jigs and Texas rigs, what else do people like to throw on it? How about heavy cover swim jigs?
Absolutely on swim jigs. It's pretty much it's an extra fast action jig rod. I mean, especially down in Texas, it's more than a 4 power. It's a heavier than a 4 power. It's closer to like a 4.5, 4 3/4 power jig rod. but it loads really, really quick. So it's going to feel like it even has more power. On single hook baits like a jig, I mean, you need a lot of penetration on a hook set. It's not like a crankbait where they're grabbing a treble hook. And the rod's been a great rod ever since we introduced it. It's just a pretty much a jig, a Texas rig worm rod. I mean, I can't really think of anything else I'd use it for. You could throw a Carolina rig on it. Not the greatest. It definitely will work. And it's one of those things that it is a long 4-power rod. You could throw a lot of stuff on it. If you had to, yeah, you could throw some small swim baits on it. You could throw chatter baits on it. There's a lot of things you can do, but it really is going to shine as a jig and a Texas rig worm rod. That's the strength of that rod.
I actually really like that rod. It's kind of displaced the Champion Extreme 745 is one of the rods that I throw the most. I feel like they're actually pretty comparable. There is a ton of questions coming in. I will say one thing to help me pick out the question, guys. If you can put like 2 or 3 question marks in front of your comment and let me know that it's a question, that'll help. I'll probably prioritize channel members a little bit. But there's a ton of questions. We will try to get to as many as we can, but I can't promise everything. Let's see here. I guess just a comment here. Hosea Silva says, thanks for the veterans discount, Gary. Loyal customer for life.
It's obviously something, I mean, I was never in the military, but I strongly support our military. Without our military, we wouldn't have the country we have. And I feel the same honesty with our police officers, our first responders. And we've done that discount since the day I started the company because I really believe those guys, they deserve a break. I mean, for everything they've done for us, it's my little payback.
Sure. And just 100% agree. You can't, I don't think you or I or anybody else can thank the veterans, the military, and the first responders and police enough. If they are and they don't know about it, what is the process or how do they take advantage of that?
Easiest way is to probably call into our office. Call in and Bryce will fix you right up. They'll take we monitor somewhat and we'll put them in our system. And then from that, after the first rod, after that, it's super easy. All they'd have to do is they could actually email it. But the first round, they really should call the office. And, it's on our website. It's 903-919-8028. But, I feel honored to be able to do a little bit with our military, both past and present. It's such a big deal. Like, we've got the best country in the world, even though some people don't debate that with me. I've been lucky enough to travel around the world quite a bit. And guys, I promise you, we live in the best country in the world.
That's a good question. Does Dobyns redo the eyes on the rods if we send them in?
Absolutely, guys. We'll do anything. Any repairs are free of charge. We don't charge nothing. The problem is the stinking shipping. That's the problem with shipping rods nowadays. They charge an arm and a leg to ship rods. So what we've done always is almost every town's going to have a wrapper or two in it. Someone will do repairs. And so if you lose a guide, all you got to do is call us, tell us, we'll say count from the bottom of what model it is, and we will send the guide to you. We will pay for the guide. We'll pay shipping for the guide to make sure you have the right size and the right guide on that rod and have a local wrapper wrap it. But if you want to send it to us, absolutely. We do all repairs free of charge. It's just part of the things, but it seems like furnishing guides is easier when there's so many local wrappers around that can wrap them.
Yeah. And that's what I typically do.
Yeah, we've always
I
done
find
that.
It's typically quicker and cheaper to just have the eyes shipped to you and you find a buddy or a fly shop or a rod shop or somebody. But if you don't want to do that, you can obviously put it in a tube, send it in, pay for the shipping and have it done that way as well.
Yeah. We'll always redo all repairs, no charge. It's just like I said, it's easier because there's almost a wrapper everywhere. I mean, somebody can wrap and it's just a lot easier than shipping rods back and forth. It's a lot cheaper. I mean, it's just ridiculous with shipping costs today.
I mean, you're in California. That's basically the home of wrappers, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. Here's kind of an interesting question. In your opinion, what obviously different rod makers have different philosophies on rod building and actions and things. What do you feel like distinguishes Dobyns from, let's say, top end Loomis and St. Croix?
Well, truthfully, guys, I'm very guilty of not paying attention to what my competitors do. I really don't pay attention. I mean, I guarantee you St. Croix builds awesome stuff, and I guarantee you G. Loomis builds awesome stuff. Um, I build awesome stuff too. I mean, my materials I use is Mitsubishi and Toray. That's number one and number two in the world. They're expensive, but you get less defects out of them. I build a little more tip action in some of my rods. So, you know, I mean, I've been accused many times of being like 1 power lighter, but it's because I want a rod to cast, you know, and they will load up and they will, you know, but if you feel like you're underpowered, if I make a 3, I'll also make a 4. If the 4 is not good enough, I'll make a 5, and in many cases, a 6 power. But everybody actions are a little bit different. But there's also, speaking of, I mean, you talk about Loomis and St. Croix, you're talking about top tier companies. I honestly think that I'm in that same exact league with them. I sell a lot of bass rods, you know, where those guys sell a lot of trout and a lot of inshore stuff. That's not what we do. I mean, I'm a bass fisherman, and now I'm starting to build some crappie rods. But I use the best materials. I use best cork. I use Fuji reel seats. I mean, I try to build the best, and I honestly believe for the price, I think Dobyns is superior.
Cool. I can't say that I've ever fished any St. Croix of any significance, but I will say I actually used to fish quite a few Loomis before I switched to Dobyns, and they are definitely just a faster action and a faster tip, which some people like that. And for their mechanics and their fishing, they're a great rod for a lot of people. And so it's kind of becomes a personal preference thing. There are people that absolutely love one or the other. And so I think it's just like nobody, you know, some people love Adidas, some people love Nike. It fits their foot differently, right? So I mean, there's something out there for everybody.
What you'll see is I will never talk down another brand. That's just not what I do. I just try to build good stuff. I try to price it very competitively for the anglers. Um, I mean, we have not took a price increase now in several years, and even though I mean my prices have really skyrocketed, but I just feel like, you know, I'm trying to give the anglers a really great rod for a great price. You know, we run a great warranty system. We try to run a super strong customer service, and you call our office and someone will answer our phone. We try to do all the little extra stuff as well as build quality product.
Darius, channel member, he wants to know what do you think the best A-rig rod near 8 foot that has a good parabolic bend to it, or what's the most popular?
Um, you know, if you can drop down into 795 swim bait rods, like I mean, that 794.5 A rig special. I mean, it was straight up made. It fits in that niche where you can throw the really light swim bait. I mean, the really light A rigs, or you could throw a little heavier A rig. Um, Before that, we sold a ton of 794s and a ton of 795s. The 794.5 fits right straight in the middle. It is a swim bait rod. It has a cork handle where all our other swim bait rods have an EVA handle. 7'9" just a great length. If you do want to push it and you want to go to 8-footers, you know, we still have a lot of guys throwing our 6-power, 8-foot 6-power crankbait rod, our 806 CB. I know my son, my Richard, he is, you know, he personally prefers the 806 CB. That's what he throws. He likes to throw lighter rigs, all 8-ounce heads, maybe a couple teasers on the top without a weight on them at all. And Rich throws the 806 CB, and I promise you, I fish behind that guy a lot. He's pretty dang deadly with it. But if you want a straight up A rig rod, I'd really look at one of the 794, 794.5, or 795s.
Yeah, right on. Clark keeps bringing up this float and fly thing. Is there a float and fly rod or one in the works?
Well, that's per se a straight up float and fly rod. Not really. We have a lot of guys are throwing a 792. That's basically our number one float and fly rod. I made a 9-foot 2-piece float and fly rod that would actually, I think it was one of the better steelhead rods that I'd ever fished with for steelhead. I am getting am getting bugged to bring those rods back. It seems like once you discontinue something and a few guys get it, all of a sudden it has a good following again. But right now, I'd say my best one is probably a 792 spinning in the Champion Series, and that is the old original DX blank for the guys that love the old Champion Extreme 792. It's the same blank. I didn't see any sense in redoing that blank when it was so strong. It's such an awesome, well balanced blank. I mean, truthfully, the materials in it are way higher than what they should be for a Champion. But the blank was just too good. I just wasn't gonna make it. Remake a rod to try to use a little bit less materials. So my margins in that rod suck, but it's a great rod. 792 SF Champ.
Nice. Welcome back to YouTube membership, Bass Assassin. Appreciate it. Let's see here. What is your opinion is the most versatile rod in the Fury line?
Probably have to be the FR 734C. It's just, my gosh, you can do so many techniques with that 734. It's unbelievable. I mean, you could literally jig fish with it. I'm not gonna say I don't have better jig rods, but it's a perfectly functional jig rod. You could Carolina rig fish with it, small swim baits, excellent buzz bait, chatterbait, spinnerbait rod. It's just, I mean, without a doubt, I would say a 734. And if I would say my second one, especially when I'm thinking the South and even honestly, even the West with Clear Lake and the Delta would be the 735. That would be my second that I would say is most versatile. I think a little overpowered is always better than a little underpowered.
Sure. Critical Gravy channel member says, I'm thinking about getting a travel spinning rod for inshore fishing to upgrade a broken rod. What would you recommend?
Well, for inshore, I mean, spinning, you probably have to go with the 703 SF. It's just, I just think that would be the best. We sell a lot of 703s for inshore. We do now. Truthfully, we sell a heck of a lot. We got a bunch of guys using the Colt 703 SF, fishing for redfish and stuff like that. Even though it scares me to death because those redfish fight so stinking hard. But I mean, I've got guides that's the only rod that they'll use. So I'd say 703 for sure.
Trying to keep up here. All right. Illuminathan 79, also a channel member. I've been interested in a Dobyns Extreme 742. Would this work well for finesse jigs, like Kitech jigs? And so that'd be like, I think the little Kitechs, right? Those are like 1/8 ounce, 1/4 ounce, super finesse jigs. Neko rigs, Neko. I want a longer rod for 15 to 20 foot. Would you recommend a 743?
For those smaller baits like that, I mean, I think the 742 is the way to go. When you think of Neko rigs and stuff like that. The one question I really have, you talking casting or spinning? We have both. I'm gonna assume that it doesn't matter. I mean, I would probably still say a 742.
It definitely right. Yeah, I think
most times I recommend a 3 power over a 2, but
yeah, a little bit personal preference, right? Because if you're finishing a spinning rod, you might be doing braid, right, or braid to fluoro, whereas you might be doing straight fluoro on a casting rod too.
And truthfully, guys, it really comes down to personal preference. I mean, I know personally when I'm doing rod recommendations, which I do a lot of, I know I tend to be a power heavier rod. I don't have a real wicked hook set. I really kind of like to just lean into them and get a good firm sweep and load the rod. That's how I like to set the hook. I feel like I lose a lot less fish than the guys that have this wicked jerking hook set. I think you lose a lot more fish. So I like to run 1 power heavier rod than a lot of the anglers do in most cases. But that's the reason a lot of times I'll ask if I'm doing rod recommendations, or even Bryce or Matt, who's ever, a lot of times we'll ask about line size, where, I know if they're fishing in Texas in the trees and they're throwing 20-pound tests, I'm going to bump them up in power. So we usually ask a few questions, and dude, we love to do rod recommendations, and we do a ton of them every single day. But once we can talk to an angler, we find out where they live. We find out, like, what's a big bass in your area? Is it going to be 5 pounds, or is it going to be, 9 or 10 pounds? Or, heaven forbid, maybe a 12 or 15 pounder in Texas. So it just kind of helps us, dial in more to that angler. But I know personally, I like to power heavier rod than most anglers.
Absolutely. So that's a good point. Anything we don't like, you don't get your rod or your question answered tonight, don't get the full answer. You're listening to the replay later. Like, you can always just call the shop, go on the website, look up the phone number, and call somebody like Bryce or Gary. Will answer the phone, and you can just have a discussion on what your scenario is. Takes 2 or 3, maybe 5 minutes, and you can get those like fully fleshed out and talk through all the scenarios. So that's hey, if you don't get it done tonight, that's the follow up.
And truthfully, guys, we do so much of this that, I hate to say this, it sounds really arrogant, but we're pretty gosh darn good at it. When we talk to anglers all the time, and, we find out where they live and, the size of the line they're fishing. I mean, if they tell me they're going to throw 6-pound test, I'm not going to put them on a 5-pound rod. I mean, there's just some things we just learned, but, we enjoy doing it. We love hearing fishing stories, and it's just something that we do. And I honestly, I don't really know if other companies do that or not. I mean, to my knowledge, no, but they very well could do it as well. But to me, it's part of customer service. I mean, I wanted that guy to get the right rod. And there's been many times that I've told the guy, I think this is the rod you need. And if it's not, let me know. We'll, send that sucker back. I'll make a refurb out of it, and I'll send the next power up or power down to help you out. I mean, we'll do extra little stuff like that for our anglers. We try to get the guys in the right rod, because everybody have different likes and dislikes in rods.
Absolutely. All right. So up here in Minnesota, those little marabou hair jig fluff balls are super popular. He's
Yep.
asking, is the 791 Champion a good, or what do you hear most people liking for the hair jig rods up here?
I have tried to make one that I really, really liked, and I've been really close, but I still haven't got it dialed in. I really don't know. Most of the time, you guys are really looking for length, cast, and distance with those light jigs. I can't tell you that I have the perfect, little marabou jig rod. I just don't really think that I have the perfect. If you're going to drop down, yeah, of course, 741 is a rod that a lot of guys fish with those. But I have tried to build. Actually, honestly, I've been playing around with an 8-footer lately, but I just haven't got it to where I can get it to cast 1/8 ounce and 1/4 ounce, but I can't get it to cast the 16th ounce like I really like. So I haven't put it out. I'm still tweaking and playing around with it, and hopefully one day I'll get it right.
I don't really like throwing the thing that much. I usually just throw it on a 742 or 702, and then I give up on it and switch. Right there. Let's see here. Oh, I saw one here. All right, so Lightning M, another. Where are Dobyns rods made?
Well, right now they're made in South Korea and China. I did have a few made there for a short period of time in Vietnam, but right now predominantly South Korea and China. And it's factories that I've used. I mean, I have no new factories. I mean, the newest factory I'm working with, I've been with for 11 years. And I just have a great working relationship with those people. They're really good friends of mine, to be honest with you. And I know that, I get clobbered once in a while about building stuff in China and so forth, but those guys do really good work. It's not that big of, like, I want to say, a price increase, but this will get me in trouble, but I'm going to say it anyway. If I had to build rods in the United States, I'd probably have to have somewhere around 150 employees. And guys, I'd put a pistol in my mouth today if I had to manage 150 employees. It's just tough, very tough. I'm lucky with the crew that we have. First thing I tell them is I refuse to be a boss, and I'm not. I'm not a boss. I mean, I have great guys. They take great care of me. Of course, we run about 10 guys. I mean, it's not like we don't have 150, but it's really difficult to find, good people that care about their job. Number one, rods, if they're not packed right, they're going to break. So, care about the job. They want to do a great job. Getting along is another great thing. And guys, right now, I have an absolutely triple A plus crew.
Landon and a few other people. I don't know. It might be the same question or the same person. Any a 756 ecstasy, is that a thing that we could see someday?
I've been getting it a lot lately, so it's a possibility. I'm it's a possibility. It'd be easy to make, truthfully. It's just a power heavier. It'd be very easy to make. I'm really looking at making a trip overseas here, hopefully in the somewhat near future. And I like to make rods when I'm there because literally I will dial that thing in a couple of days and have it done, completed, and it's easy. That is one that isn't in the back of my mind, though. There's a couple. We have a new rod coming that we got a lot of requests, and this one basically the spearheader on this one was Brian Plinzer, who's my Michigan rep. There's a lot of guys that want a 746 CB for throwing chatterbaits and smaller swim baits and getting away from the glass. Even though, guys, that 736 CB glass is an absolutely phenomenal chatterbait rod, but there's just a lot of guys that don't want to throw glass. And so Brian got after me last year, and you will see a 746 CB in the very, very near future. I mean, I'm afraid to say when, but it could even be this week. I mean, it's close.
Is that a champion?
It's great rod. It's great rod. Yep, it's going to be a champion. It's a phenomenal for like throwing 4.3, 4.8, Kitex, chatterbaits. I mean, guys, it's going to be a great spinnerbait rod. It's just going to be a really good utility rod. And I think most of you guys know that we're really strong with crankbait rods anyway. Jerk baits has been my deal my whole life. I love throwing them, and therefore crankbait, jerk bait, same action rod. But the 746 CB, I think, is going to be a really good rod for us. And like I said, Brian Plinzer, he's the one that beat on me for that rod, and I made it.
Cool. Another new member here, Caleb Curvin. Welcome to Team Hella. We'll throw up one of your questions right away here. Any chance for a Champion Extreme 705 full handle? Actually, I think the 705 gone away, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's gone away. I built the 705, and truthfully, guys, we just didn't sell enough of them. I still have that blank. I could have it. I could make it easy because it's already done. It was just, I've discontinued a dozen or so rods, and we did just complete our 18th year, guys. We just started our 19th year. And I've discontinued a dozen or so rods in that time. And that's one of them that I did discontinue, just simply because we just didn't have the sales for it.
I guess I wasn't convincing enough people. That was my favorite jig dock rod. All right.
And guys, talking about the split handle versus full handle, when started a rod company, split handles were just blowing up. I mean, that was a thing. And it was probably a 70-30 or something like that. And the full handle is really coming back around. We're seeing a lot of full handle guys requesting full handles. And as many of you guys know, if it's a popular model with us, I offer it both ways. So you really have your choice. Like Champ 734, 735. I mean, those are all both split and full handles. Me personally, I prefer a full handle. That split always seems to get hooked in my hoodie pockets and stuff. I don't know how the heck I do it, but I managed to do that. So I'm a full handle guy. But I will tell you, the state of Texas is predominantly split handles, and I'll be dang if I know why.
All right. So speaking of that, there's been a couple questions about the longer. Let's see here. It seems like they said a lot of the longer rods have full handle. Can you so people that don't like full handles on the yeah. So why are all the handles on the 7.2 and up spinning rods full grip?
Well, they're really not. I have a lot of 702, 703s that are split in various
I
series.
think they're saying up
Um,
above 7'2"
it
is what he's saying.
I've always just felt like that split handle is just it just gets hung in your pockets, and I've just always felt we've done better with full handles in those. I mean, making a split is super easy. It's just that when you have so many stinking SKUs, managing that many SKUs, it's difficult. But if I could sell a bunch of split handles in a 743 spinning, I mean, I'd make it no problem. It just seems like the longer the rods, the guys seem to request more full handles, and that could change a little bit. Like just like our swim bait rods, when we start making swim bait rods, everybody wanted EVA. That was the deal, EVA, EVA. And now all of a sudden, I'm getting some guys asking for cork. But as everyone knows, the quality of cork is really going downhill. So you're seeing more and more companies go EVA. I will say this: cork is very expensive, and EVA is very cheap. And that's why a lot of the companies are going to EVA. I like a cork handle myself. I mean, on a swim bait rod, I can fish an EVA handle. It doesn't make a lot of difference. They knock the fire out of it. It doesn't really matter to me. But on everything else, I pretty much like cork handles. We didn't do it obviously on some of our cheaper rods, and I tell you guys, it was straight up a price deal. I can't build a $79 or a $99 rod and put cork handles on them. I mean, because I'm still using the same Mitsubishi materials in those. And so the heart of the rod is the blank. If you don't have a great blank, you're never going to build a decent rod. So I'll put the money into the blank and then figure the rest of it out after the fact. And I hope that makes sense. But if you don't have a good blank, that's the heart of the rod. You're never going to build a good rod.
We got 185 people on YouTube. I put up a poll for longer spinning rods, what handle style, split, full, or doesn't matter. So if you people are watching on Facebook or Instagram or anywhere and you want to come vote, hop over to YouTube and we'll get some results here.
Those kind of
Dave
stuff's
Bromswiggle
interesting
Fishing,
to me.
yeah, we'll see what they say. Thanks for becoming a member. Appreciate it, David. Let's see if we can find one of David's questions here. I know I saw one here. There we go. Past few years, I've been building my custom rods with carbon fiber grips over cork. Are you looking at releasing a lineup with carbon fiber ever?
I'm going to tell you, I played with it. I still prefer cork, and I think more of the anglers prefer it as well. And I know that one of the companies that I used to work, kind of hand in hand, we're really good friends. More so is Lamiglass, and they tried to launch that carbon fiber handle, and they really did not do well with it at all. Again, very friendly company. They just been some changes in there with Tom got killed in a plane crash and that kind of, and John Posey retired out, and of course Dick Posey passed away. So there's been a lot of changes within that company. So I can't say that all my buddies are just not there anymore. And I know when they tried that carbon fiber, it really tanked for them. And another thing is I personally prefer Tennessee handles on my spinning rods. I mean, all my custom built rods were always Tennessee handles. And you can't sell a Tennessee handle spinning rod. They just don't sell. But it's absolutely awesome because you can perfectly balance that reel of that rod. It's so easy. And but a lot of the guys think that you're either ripping them off by not putting a reel seat on it, or some guys think that a fish is going to pull that reel off that rod, and it's never going to happen. I believe in your area, you guys have probably seen more Tennessee handles over the years than we have in any other parts of the country. But I mean, I love a Tennessee handle rod, but they just won't sell.
Yeah, I had when I was younger. I remember having maybe an old All Star that was a Tennessee handle. Then because I would like, yeah, but yeah, you just don't see them.
No.
I know a couple people asked that question earlier, so hopefully that answers your question. Like, they're good, but there's just not enough demand for them.
They're absolutely awesome. I mean, I prefer them, but you just can't sell them. They're just you can't get enough customers that will really buy into the fact of the Tennessee handle. Like I said, all my custom rods I always built were full Tennessee handles.
Yeah, and in theory, isn't a Tennessee handle a little less expensive without a seat? But
Oh, it's absolutely.
you could offer a
It's
better rod for less money with the Tennessee handle, right?
true. Yeah, but you can't sell them.
Right. I'm
And
just saying, like,
yeah,
what you would make up in margin, you would lose in volume.
yeah.
Here, let me flip through some questions. Yeah, this is so. I think last time we talked, you had the kind of the new, I don't know, hybrid cork. Is that what it was called? What's the status on the hybrid cork?
You know, guys, it's something that I absolutely love it myself. And we did that shout out to the anglers and we did kind of a direct sale for a few hundred rods in those models. And that's how I love to test the market that way. I mean, I love to hear from the anglers. And the thing that scared me off was, and I'm not going to say that I'm not going to do it because cork quality is still going down. And, and that I'm losing my mind on what they really call that, but it's a basically a hybrid, cork. But a lot of the responses we got, and I do thank the anglers for the responses. We got a lot of feedback on that. But many of them thought we were doing it to try to save money. And in fact, those handles are considerably more money. Considerably more money, but you don't have the defects, you don't have the filler, you don't have any of that. They were also a little tackier to your hand especially when they got wet. Some anglers loved it, some anglers hated it. But I had enough guys that just absolutely hated it. They said they would switch brand if that was the only handle I was going to put on the rods. And it just I don't know why people would take that hard a stance because it's still cork. And honestly, I still think they're better. I mean, I've got several of them I fish myself. I actually love them. But when I had about 20% of the guys just absolutely hate them. But I also had about 50% of the guys that absolutely loved them. But in many times they said, I can go either way, regular cork or that. As long as I get cork, I'm happy. But when the 20% of the guys that just absolutely bashed us for it honestly kind of scared me away.
Sure. Yeah, and so what he's talking about, basically, he used I guess there's a really big Dobyns community group on Facebook, and so occasionally Gary will put up, I guess, limited release special runs in exchange for angler feedback, and they usually get posted there, and they usually kind of sell out when there's a couple hundred rods of a certain model, and that's kind of what he's talking about.
Yeah. And it works really good. I mean, I like to test stuff for about a year before I put it out. But on some of that stuff like that, it's so easier to get, a couple of hundred rods out in guys' hands really fast that are, legit fishermen are going to use them. And I just get great feedback. And I love that. And we get some of these guys will write a full page review of the 100% of what they like and what they don't like and da 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 da. It's but if you can engage your anglers and let them have an opinion or a thought or a say in how we go forward with something, it's a big deal.
Let's see if we can. It's just a comment. Champion 795, long handle, best rod I ever owned.
And that's one of those rods I personally hate that rod, but we have guys that love it, so we build it. I mean, I just that maybe it's because I got a little extra large gut sticking out in front of me, but that long handle just doesn't fit me. But we sell a lot of guys love it.
Yeah, you got guys like Trey begging for more ecstasy rods. He's got a bougie taste.
That's potentially gonna happen too. I mean, I'm gonna fill that line in, and now that I can get guides, because one of the things that was killing me on the ecstasy is we had a 365-day lead time. We had to pre-buy the Torzite guides, and it was a 365-day lead time to get them. It was brutal. I mean, to try to order rods a year, to order guides a year in advance was, but now Fuji's caught up. Now we're back to, somewhere in the 60 to 75 day lead time. So now it's very reasonable to do again.
Nice. Brown Bait Company says, Gary, are you a big bait guy?
I'm not. I mean, I do throw them. I throw them. I like, about 9-inch swim baits. I threw a lot of 8-inch Huddlestons, a lot of 9-inch Ospreys, and 7 and 9-inch Ospreys. I threw a lot of those size baits. But when you get into those, 10, 11, 12-inch baits, nah, that's not my deal, guys. I like to get bites, and I'm not out there fishing after, 1 or 2 bites. I'm just not that big bait guy. I tell you, I did go to that swim bait show they had on Lake Fork this year. I went down with my buddy Mike Buca. Went out and hung out with Mike, and man, I'll tell you, I got my eyes open, and that's a strong crowd. I mean, there was so many guys there. There was guys carrying around like briefcases with these, it's like I don't even think a lot of these baits ever hit the water. And the thought of paying $500 to $1,000 for a swim bait, I mean, I'd be throwing that sucker on, nylon rope. But they do it.
Nice. And actually, I guess.
Let me just on to further say that was when I got hooked on swim baits, when it first started really getting big, I probably have more 100th place finishes for those days that them big fish wanted to follow it and roll around on it and tease you and do everything but eat it. And pretty soon it's noon or 1 o'clock, and I got an empty live well. And I took some really good thumpings in tournaments that, just getting hung up throwing in bigger swim baits. I mean, I remember one in the Delta. Actually, I got eliminated, and when FLW took us down to Amstead, and I got hung up doing that, and I got eliminated in that strictly because of those big baits, because those giant bass. And the day before they were hitting it in practice, but once the tournament starts, they follow it. They do everything. You think you're going to catch the next one, and you just end up with an empty live well at the end of the day. And as a tournament fisherman, if that bite's on, you got to be on it. But a lot of times that bite's going to hurt you.
I guess if you want to talk big baits, Bryce is a good guy to call. I think he's got a little affinity for the big baits.
That's an understatement. Bryce is a complete nutcase with the big baits. And I'll be honest, I've got to where I give all the swim bait questions to Bryce because he knows every one of those baits far better than I do. He knows the weights. I pass all the big swim bait questions to Bryce because he really is. He's a big bait fanatic.
Mm-hmm. All right. Patrick, question. Best non-crankbait rod, champion XP or below for throwing cranks?
Non-crankbait rod?
I think he's saying below champion, not a crankbait rod.
But he wants to throw crankbaits on it.
For me, like a 3-power Sierra is a pretty decent crankbait rod for not being a crankbait rod.
Yep. You'd have to drop down to like a 2 or a 3-power. And the reason being is it's going to load fast. And so it's just going to it's going to feel like it has a lot more power than one of those slow loading mod fast. And there's a jerkbait craze. There's a lot of guys that are wanting to throw extra fast spinning rods right now for jerkbaits. That craze is out there. The trouble is, I mean, if you don't have a really loose drag, you're going to lose a lot of those fish at the boat. When they get to the boat and they start lunging, that mod fast will load real slow and it'll keep from ripping those hooks out of those fish. So I'm a big jerkbait bite guy, and I have been forever. And I mean, I'm a mod fast action on crankbaits and jerkbaits. It's just, I mean, you just lose a lot less fish, and you're going to lose some fish anytime you're throwing treble hook baits. And the same thing with a chatterbait. It's just a bait that you're going to lose some fish, but you're going to get a lot of bites too.
Yeah. So here's kind of a similar question. Jerry says, best rod for lipless cranks, loves the SA 734. So I don't know if he's throwing a Sierra rod for lipless, but what is the most popular lipless rod?
Probably a 733, probably. I'll tell you, I was fishing grass in the Delta, Cal Delta. I'm sorry.
Would you say you'd even go with a 733 over a crank rod for a lipless?
Either one of them will work. A 733 is a real popular one. You know, I'd say the most popular one is 705 CB. That's the most popular one. But when I fish it around grass, I like that faster action because you can actually snap that bait. You can clear that grass off those treble hooks. You know, with the Mod Fast, it doesn't have that snap. It doesn't load quick enough, so you can't just snap that grass off. And if you're fishing around a lot of grasses, and many of you guys are going to know this, and as soon as I say it, when you pop that grass off, boom, you get a strike. It's so when I was fishing around grass, I really don't throw the CBs. I really don't. I will go to I usually throw a 734. But if I'm fishing open water, you know, like in the western big reservoir, Shasta, Oroville, stuff like that, absolutely either a 705 CB. Truthfully, I mean, I really hung up on that 764 CB. It's one of my favorite rods I make. 7'6", 4-power CB, phenomenal rod.
All right. So many questions. It's kind of a follow up to earlier. Why is cork quality going down? What's the reason behind that?
They say it's all about over harvesting and stuff on the cork, but it's steadily been going down for a lot of years. It's just terrible, and then you get a lot of that filler. And I mean, unless you're going to coat that, I mean, that filler once it gets old and rained on a bunch, and the filler falls out, and then it looks like crap. But you can also coat. You can put a coating on the cork, and it'll save a lot of that filler, and it'll keep the cork looking good. Just a good sealer, cork sealer.
What's a general purpose power fishing bait caster rod for a first time Dobyns buyer?
Which rod? Oh, dude, I would say for
Yeah,
a
I would say
first time
if you
buyer.
guys are when you ask for a rod question, either designate a series or a price point. That would be helpful to narrow it down a little bit because there are like 200 models, and so if your budget's 300 or 100, that's a different answer. But
But to answer that, I mean, I'm gonna grab a 734 in some series.
right.
734, and if you did a Champion Extreme, it'd be a 744. But 734 is hard to believe. And I'll tell you guys, in all honesty, an absolutely phenomenal 734 rod is that Colt. That's 79 bucks. That thing casts and fishes. I have got pro anglers using that for throwing super spooks on it. It's really and also it's a great lipless. And I will tell you, I mean, in all honesty, it's got 15% glass in it. So it's very durable. You don't feel it doesn't really. It's got such a small amount of glass. If I didn't tell you, you wouldn't even know that it was in there. And it's a very very well balanced rod. Fish is awesome. I mean, I've got a ton of guys using that rod, and it's 79 bucks retail.
So wasn't there? I guess there was rumblings that the Colt was going away, or is it sticking around?
I want the Colt to go away. Truthfully, I want the Colt to go away, but I will tell you, it's probably not going to be for another 2 years. I have a lot of inventory. You know, the thing about it is I'm always I run heavy on inventory, and you know I hate being out of stuff, and I'm going to say the Colt's going to be around for another 2 years. And honestly, as long as our big box buyers are insisting on it, it'll be around longer than that. But I would like to see it go away, but it's not going to be anytime soon.
All right. So here's another member question. Daniel T. Speaking of discounts, he's curious why the codes like the HellaBass code no longer work for Dobyns at Omnia.
I don't have an answer for that.
Okay.
I don't have an answer for that. I literally I just don't know.
I was
But
told that there was a map pricing restriction, is what I was told. But
I really don't know anything about that.
okay.
I don't have an answer.
Yeah,
I hate saying that. It's just the truth. I just don't have an answer for that.
sounds good. Let's see here. One more question about the 744 Champ. Is it more
Mhm.
designed for flipping pitching jigs in around grass docks or dragging a jig in open water?
I'll tell you truthfully, it's great for a casting rod, and it's great for a dragon rod. And see, in the West, we fish, and we fish a lot of times, from like November, December, and up through the winter time. We get our cold fronts with these spotted bass. We go deep, so it's really not uncommon for us to be fishing in 50 to 60 foot of water, and to fish effectively, you need to be able to boat drag. And you need a rod that's going to load quick, because you got to get that hook point in, and then once you set the hook, you really need to load that rod to bring them in. But it's a great dragging rod, but you can also pitch very well with it. Honestly, it does it. You can pitch, you can cast, and you can drag with it. I mean, that rod, I can't say that it has a shortcoming on any of those things. You can do absolutely any. I've got guys that are fishing the California Delta pitching 5-inch and 6-inch weightless Cincos with that rod back into the Thule's and things. It's that fast action, just it loads really quick, and it's going to seem a lot more powerful than a standard 4-power.
Yeah, I flip a 3/4 ounce like tungsten jig on like deep coontail and milfoil and don't have any problem. So and flipping in what we call reeds here, which is what we call Thule's out west.
Yes, exactly. Reeds, Thule's, and cattails, and all the above.
Yeah. And just so you guys know, I've got like 80 questions starred, and we're trying to get through them as fast as we can, but we're probably not getting to everybody's question, but I'm trying to balance them here a little bit. If you absolutely need your question answered, you could do a small super chat, and I definitely will prioritize it. I'm not requiring that, but that will definitely push you to the top. Hunter Bull says, any plans for a true extra fast jig rod in the Ecstasy lineup?
At this time, I don't. That 755 is pretty quick and pretty powerful, and that rod it's more than a 5. It's like a 5.5. It's my Texas jig rod. That's the rod I reach for every single time when I'm fishing in Texas because of all the trees and stuff. I don't really. I tell you truthfully, if you went really extra fast with that material, that high end of material, guys, I really think I'd have trouble with some breakage, just for the fact of guys that I gotta say this the right way. There's right ways to boat flip fish and wrong ways to boat flip fish, and the guys that do it wrong, you get an extra fast tip, I'm gonna have some problems with them. And always remember, when you grab a rod up the blank to swing a fish in, you're taking all of the engineering out of that blank. If you'll swing it hanging on to the butt of the rod and swing it if you can do it, or grab really low. But if you grab up that rod, you're taking all the engineering out of that blank. And it just, man, I tell you, it just scares me to death. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of rod companies out there that build rods that are mod fast, but they say fast. It has to say fast on it to sell in most cases if you're not a crankbait rod, but they are not fast by any means. And the reason they're not is because they're going to break. That's just the way I try to build as much as possible for that, because guys, I'm horrible about boat flipping fish. I boat flip them all the time. But if you need that fish coming, when he's going away for you, you're not trying to boat flip him. You want to use his momentum a little bit as he's coming, and you can boat flip him in pretty easy. But it is dangerous. There's more rods broke boat flipping fish than probably even stepping on them.
Yeah. Carl, thank you for the $5 super chat. Much appreciated. Not needed, but always appreciated, buddy. Let's see here. Yeah, we kind of talked about full cork. Like, it's really just a balance thing, right? So I don't think we're going to see full cork in the Fury line for cost reasons, right? Kind of the EVA keeps the price down, I think.
Yeah, it's got corkage on your handle where your hand is, but it's got EVA on the butt. And again, that's 100% cost deal. A full cork on a Fury, it would kill me, guys, price wise. I just wouldn't be able to do it and maintain that blank quality. You'd need to jump up. That's when you really need to jump up. Really look at that Kaden line. It's you're only talking another $30 retail, and you're going to get your full cork.
Sean Lai says, what blanks are the Buka rods?
The Buka rod's 8'3". And I've made some 8'3" swim bait rods, years and years ago. Mike wanted an 8'3". I bought into it. We made it. We made the 836, which we sold a lot of. So Mike wanted to come back and do an 830. I wasn't super crazy about it. Normally the 5 powers outsell the 6 powers on those, but when you get into those longer swim bait rods, guys are throwing bigger baits, and they're going to want that longer rod, and they're not wanting that longer rod to throw lighter baits on it. The 5 power, I mean, we sell plenty of them to keep them. It's not going to go away, but the 6 power far outsells the 5 power, and it's a great rod for us. And Mike does a great job promoting it too. Even though he's no good clear to the cord, I hope he's on here and he heard me say that. So
well, we know he didn't
buddy
hear you.
Mine for a long time. What's that?
There's no chance he heard you.
Dude, I'm always going to trash talk my buddies, and Mike's one of my buddies, and we don't miss a shot at each other. I promise you.
But I guess is the blank of the Buka closer like a Kaden or a Champion? I guess that's what he's asking.
It's close.
Just its own unique.
It's kind of its own unique. It's kind of right in the middle, to be honest with you.
Okay. So it's its own animal. So I guess a question about the Kaden swim bait travel rods. Are they actual Kadens, or are they like? I mean, are those all unique blanks that are pretty much Kaden blanks, or how would you describe the Travel Series versus the regular Kadens?
That's a hard question. It's the same Kaden materials, but because we're having to use joints and stuff, we had to boost some. We had to boost some up in some areas. But it is Kaden materials, and the Kaden is just such a strong series for us. That's just where I really wanted to put it. The travel rods obviously they're a lot more expensive just for the fact that you're talking 3-piece, plus you're talking a case to carry them in. And we made the cases big enough. I mean, a lot of times you can actually put two rods in one case. We've had guys doing that already, and it's got a clip on it where you can clip it on your backpack and take off up the string. But it is Kaden materials, but it's still a little different. I had to make them a little thicker in areas and stuff just because of those connections.
Sure.
And while we're on connections, there is a gap. There is a gap in that. It is made that way on purpose. It's made to wear in. And when the first time when I made the Jones rods, man, we took a bashing on that. That's a high-end connection. The old style where they fit down in there flush and tight. That is not the right way to do it. It is not. So you will see a little gap. That thing is made to wear in, taking it apart, putting it back together thousands of times. I mean, it's literally made that way 100% on purpose. And there's a name for that connection, and I'm absolutely drawing a blank on it, and I apologize.
All right. Carl says he's from Massachusetts, fishes a lot of quarter, up to 3/8 ounce jigs. Do you think the 725 ecstasy would be a good fit, or a 724? I think is what he's asking.
Either one of them will work, I guarantee you. But that probably dropped down to a 4 power. That's one of those questions, right? Me, I personally would throw a 5 because I know that I like a power heavier. But I tell you, probably 90% of the guys would throw the 724. And we sell a lot more 724s.
There's been several questions about the best spook rod.
The best spook rod, in my opinion, is this Champion 734C. And I got to say that because that's what I made that rod for originally, as my own personal super spook rod. But I will tell you, you can do the same thing with the Fury 734 and a Colt 734. But I made the Champion 734 originally. That's the reason it's a fast action rod, but it's on the slower side of fast. It's not like the 733 and the 734 and a Champion rod, they're a little bit on the slower side of fast. The 735 now is going to jump right up and be just, I even call it extra fast at times. It's really, really fast. But that 4 power, when you slow it down just a little bit, it makes it a much more versatile rod. That's when, like I said, that's what I throw my lipless on at a Delta around grass and stuff. It's just a little bit slower. I wouldn't throw a 735. It's going to load too quick. I'm going to rip hooks out of fish. But super spook rod, some guys are going to throw a 733, but if you'll try that 734, I just can't imagine that you won't fall in love with it.
So talking about rod connections, any plans to make a two-piece rod with the ferrule at the handle like some of the JDM rods?
That's one of the best connections you can do. I absolutely I love that connection. I've made a bunch of samples with it. I even have some samples that the cool thing about it, it helps you on shipping. So I can ship a a lot longer rod. The connection is right at the top of what would be basically the foregrip, or in my case it'd be the top of the reel seat, which I'd probably put a foregrip on it if I was going to do that. And you can't visually even tell that it's a two-piece rod. It's the way to do it. It really is the way to do it. I've made numerous samples. I've just never pulled the trigger and done it, but it could help me a lot on shipping. See, guys, as soon as you break that 96-inch shipping, it skyrockets. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And that's the reason we do a lot of drop ships and our swim bait rods for our dealers, because I get better shipping rates than they do. Even I will even tell you, like, we don't drop ship for Tackle Warehouse, except we get into those long swim bait rods. Tackle Warehouse doesn't believe in doing drop ships. We never did a drop ship at all. But as crazy as this sounds, my shipping prices is better on those rods than Tackle Warehouses is. And obviously they probably ship 1,000 or 10,000 packages to my one. So I don't know why my rates are better. Maybe because everything I'm shipping is long, where they're shipping majority boxes. But once you break that 8 foot mark, it's really brutal on shipping costs. But I could do the same thing. I mean, I could make that connection like a lot of the Japanese rods are doing. And that connection's been around for a long time. I mean, I've known about it for 20 plus years for sure.
Yeah. And my understanding is it's almost default in like Japan and overseas for a lot of places. That's almost the standard style of rods. Do you think there would be a customer acceptance issue over here, or what's your perception on that?
Um, I don't think the guys would fight it, because you won't, once you connect it, you can't feel it. You don't know it. Then there's obviously that there's no change in the action of the blank, where a lot of times when you have connections up the blank, you're going to have a flat spot right there at those connections. When you connect it right down, when you do a two-piece and you're doing it right there in the butt section, it doesn't hurt anything. It's very easy to do. It's a little costlier. Shipping is much better shipping price, but then I'd have to somehow or another, which would be easy to do. I just have to package them different, for shipping them. It wouldn't be a big deal. I just don't see it done here a lot in the States. I just don't know if it would be as readily accepted. Guys like one-piece bass rods, I think they're more sensitive.
Yeah, might be something to make and do the kind of like the new cork and do a
Dude, I
test
could
run.
do I could do a trial. I could do a trial test run on that. And when I've thought about doing it before, I mean, I've actually made a few samples and I sent them to a few guys to test. And a couple of the guys, they go, well, I don't like it. I said, super. I mean, put some freaking epoxy in there. Epoxy that thing straight, solid, and it's just like a one-piece rod at that point. You just need never taking it apart again. But if you didn't like it, you could always epoxy it together, and it would be there forever.
But and I think there is some like people that kayaks, travel rods, people with 17, 18 foot bass boats that can't foot that would allow you to have an 8 foot swim bait rod and still put it in your rod locker of like a 17 foot bass boat. I mean, there's a lot of advantages once you get over that like mental hurdle of it being a two piece, but it's not. I mean, it's when it's at that point in the connection, it's not really a two piece, right? When you fish it.
That's true. And it fishes like a one piece rod. I tell you, it fishes like a one piece rod. You'd have to take it apart to slide it to put it in a rod box, which would be a little difficult. Just dealing with the slack line and stuff. With the reel and the line, but it'd be very doable. And you're right. When you get these 17, 18-foot boats, you're not putting 8-foot rods in them. So that's actually a very, very good point. And who knows, maybe I'll just do a trial thing and we'll just see how it goes over. I mean, trust me, if guys want something, we can sell enough of them. I promise you, I'll make it for them.
And for co-anglers, traveling, things like that, right? Like you start getting those bigger rods, you can't angle them right in your trucks and things like that. So, yeah, I think it's just this perception that multi-piece rods equal cheap, and that's not always true. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, I mean, when I was first started bass fishing, telescoping flipping sticks were the standard. Like you didn't, you know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I guess there's probably still some out there. Like I said earlier, I'm really bad about watching what other people are doing, but I don't know of a telescoping rods. I mean, maybe there's a million of them. I don't know. But you're right. That all the flipping sticks used to be telescopic, every one of them.
Yeah, I would say about 10 years ago, I bought a couple cheapo flipping sticks at like Fleet Farm that were super on clearance, and then I ended up donating them to a high school fishing team. That's the last I saw of them. But well, we're gonna actually just take a super quick 1-minute break, and then we'll be back for a whole bunch more questions.
Are you ready to reel in your next home purchase or refinance? Supreme Lending's Dream Team can help guide you through the entire mortgage process, from pre-qualification to closing. We have a wide variety of home loan programs in our tackle box, including down payment assistance and first-time homebuyer options. You can ask HellaBass. He trusted us to help finance his home. Contact the Dream Team today by searching Supreme Lending Dream Team, or click the link below in the description, or scan the QR code on your screen.
We're back. Should we look at the results from the so 169 votes on our spinning rod handle question so far. It's 41% full, 33% split, and 26% don't care. So there's I guess about a 5% that want the full more than the split, and that don't care. So I guess, yeah, I mean, the split are a little bit in the minority. I guess it's 8%. So in the spirit of, you've already got 200 models in your lineup, you can't double up every spinning rod over 7.2 for 8% of the people. So
yeah, that would be tough. That would be tough.
All right, let's get back into, let's see. Question from a while ago, Doug Jenkins. Ever thought about making a 1.5 to 2 power extra fast drop shot specific rod?
We have so many rods that really do that right now. I mean, that DX702 is, I mean, we sell tons of them. Or the XD721. I mean, guys, we just blow those things out the door. I don't call them specific drop shot rods, but I do label them. A lot of XD, I don't label it, but they are perfect. I mean, they're absolutely exceptional drop shot rods. And 1 or a 2 power. It just depends on if you're going to use an open hook, like a Gamakatsu split shot drop shot hook, and you're not going to rig it Texas. You can get that lighter one. One thing about drop shotting is if you're fishing around grass, RoboWorm makes what they call a rebarb hook that is a Texas rig. And guys, it's the greatest thing that I've ever seen. You can fish it around grass, you can fish it around heavy cover. They make it in a 4/0, so you can actually put a 6 or 7 inch worm on it, and you can rig it weedless. and it is absolutely the best thing I've ever seen in my life. It's got and it won't slide down the hook. It's phenomenal. Just look up Robo and the rebarb hooks, and I mean, they're totally badass.
Nice. Yeah.
They work far better than like an offset hook. I mean, they really do.
And Owner's got the cover shot now, which is another good option. There's been a few other companies. The rebarb was definitely the first one. There's a few other companies that have kind of come out with some similar styles for sure. Yeah,
I just love the rebarb hook. I mean, and I'll fish it. I'll fish it in timber, with a 4-aught, and I'm one of those. I use it. I love to pitch. I hate drop shot fishing. I don't do it, except for I pitch a drop shot a lot, and I'll put a really small, like a Spro barrel swivel, like say 4 foot up, and I'll have braided line above that, and I'll have like 20-pound test fluoro. I like leader material because it's really stiff and it's really strong knots, and I'll just pitch it around the stumps and stuff, like in Texas or California Delta. I mean, I weighed the heaviest bag in the whole term on California Delta, and I caught every one of them pitching a drop shot back in the toolies. It's just a great way to fish. But that's not a light action rod. I mean,
sure. Gary, just a comment, says he's visited the Dobyns warehouse in Sulphur Springs on trips to Lake Fork. Loves the crew. Bryce is awesome. Gold standard customer service. So I think that's just a highlight. If you guys are in the area, the shop is open, Monday through Friday? People can swing in during normal business hours. And
yeah, guys, we love visitors. I mean, truthfully, I haven't, I've made a sign. I still haven't put it on the building. But everybody finds us. You ain't going to hide from a bass fisherman. He wants to find you. He's going to find you. And we welcome all visitors and all walk-ins. And you can see every rod there. We even had guys come down that was really specifically after a certain technique. And I remember one guy, he was casting trick worms, and he wanted a bait caster. And he says, I told him, I said, dude, you're going to want a Champion 733. And he says, nah, I don't think so. We came down there, and he brought his reels that he's using. We took about 10 rods. We went outside, and we casted all of them. I worked with him for about an hour, and he bought a Champion 733. It was a perfect rod for what he needed. But when you can actually feel them, you can walk out back, cast them. I mean, you're going to leave there with a rod that you really, really fit. Whatever you're using, it's going to fit. I tell guys, bring your reels. We'll work with you. We love doing it. We got a bunch of fishermen in there. I invite anybody. I'm kind of proud of our warehouse. We keep it clean. We keep it organized. And like I said again, I have an absolutely excellent crew of guys in there, guys and gals.
David, headed to Mexico next week. They have Furies that you can rent at the lodge. Topwater, shower blow, and a straight braid. What rod should I look for in their racks?
Shower blows. 734.
Yeah.
It's
733.
It's basically a spook rod. That's why we've got so many guys doing the travel rods. We've done well with the travel rods for guys headed to Mexico, because it's a carry-on. You can carry it on, put it right on your backpack and carry it on. And you can actually put a couple rods in those tubes as well.
Scott says, can you explain why higher end rods are not sanded besides the cool look?
Kind of a tough question. If you're getting a defect in a blank, most of the time it's because it's over sanded on one side. These rods they're sanded in a machine, but it's still by hand feel. And the guys get really, really good at it. But an unsanded blank, they're going to be slightly stronger. They're going to be, I can't say what that is, 3 to 5%. I've heard as high as 7% stronger than a sanded blank. But it's not going to, if it's not sanded, there's no way to oversand one spot where one side of that rod's slightly thinner because it will break. So it eliminates defects. I like the look of them. I like taking away that defect issue. And, I use and some of the people, it depends on how tight the wrap is. Like we usually use a 1 millimeter wrap to 1.2 millimeter wrap. So it's a really, really tight wrapped blank. I mean, I like the unsanded myself. Some people think it damages fishing line. I absolutely guarantee you it does not. Absolutely guarantee you it doesn't. Um, it's no cheaper. I mean, it doesn't cost. It does take a step away. It really does. But I'll take that 3 to 5 to 7% strength and no defect. And just so guys know too, is I don't want to deal with defects, just like you don't want to. So every single one of my rods is deadlifted twice before it ever leaves the factory. As soon as the blank is made, they'll put a piece of tape on the end of the blank. They'll hook a piece of nylon basically, and they'll lift whatever the determined weight is. And I say that rod has to be able to lift, and it's deadlifted. Then it goes through the whole process. It gets guide wrapped, everything gets all guided up. Right before it's set in that plastic sleeve, I have it deadlifted again. And I'll tell you, every time I go over, I watch, and we run. It never fails. We run about 1% defect. The last time I was there, I watched them do three groups of 100. One broke none, one broke two, and one broke one. I mean, so we had basically 3 breaks out of 300 rods. And that's very, very low in industry standards. But if it's going to break like that, I want it to break there, and they get it. It's just gone, so I don't have to deal with it. Now, does some slip through? Occasionally, probably, yeah. They really shouldn't. But when a guy breaks a brand new rod, I've got to replace it. That's just part of it. I can't tell the guy no, it didn't have a defect. I mean, if it's a brand new rod and he breaks it, I mean, I'm going to have to replace it for him. But I do deadlift twice. I mean, I want to try to take care of as many of the defects as I can get. Non-sanded blanks automatically cuts down a little bit on our defect. And, I hate problems. Fishermen don't like problems. I don't like problems either, I promise you.
And if you've seen how UPS, FedEx, UPS, handle tubes, you'd be surprised there's little defects as there are. Post manufacturing, like once you get into the supply chain, it's another animal. So
it's a whole nother animal. And I tell you, we just had one that was put on. I won't name the company that shipped it, but it hit Texas Fishing Forum. I mean, the rod was sticking through the box and broke. Because they didn't package it. But when we package them, we tie the rods in place, because they throw these rods when they're loading that truck. They throw them in there like it's a javelin. And we had one driver that was so bad that, we exchanged some pretty severe words. And when I didn't get the answers I liked out of him, I called his boss or the rep. And I raised holy hell with him, because he was literally throwing them 30, 40 feet into the truck. And we make a cart that rolls right to the back of that truck, and all you got to do is set them in there. We do everything we can to make his job super easy. We roll him right through a big door, literally right to his truck. But this guy decided he wanted to throw them, and I'll be honest, it flat pissed me off, because it's more of a chance to get something damaged. And that's just what I could see. There's no telling what happens, once they're out.
Yeah, there's a lot of automation too. It's not always just people. There's conveyors, and they can get jammed, and turns and belts and all kinds of things. And most of my Dobyns rods have come direct from, either the old warehouse in California or the new one in Texas. You guys have always done a superior job. I've never had any problems. But you do see on Facebook and places like that, some of the dealers don't have as high quality materials or tubes or things like that, and they don't, and that's where.
And we test our tubes. We test tubes. We make sure the tubes are strong. But guys, you'd be surprised at how many tubes we've got in that literally have tire marks on them, where they've actually ran them over with the truck. I swear to God, that's true. But we do everything we can. But there's still, and our tubes are not supposed to go on a conveyor belt. They're supposed to be hand carried. But listen, I know for a fact they put them on a conveyor belt. I know they do. But we pay an extra fee. It's part of the handling process, so our rods do not go on a conveyor belt, but I know they do. Still, it's just we do everything we can, but still we're going to have human errors.
Absolutely. Big Bass King, he wants to ask you, how many boats did you win back in the day?
I've won, I hate round numbers, so it always sounds phony, but I've won 40 fully rigged bass boats, 38 Rangers, 1 Champion, and 1 Nitro. And it was, guys, I'll be honest with you, bass fishing is a lot harder to make a living at it now than it was back then. We were fortunate enough to fish for a lot of money. You know, I mean, when we was fishing our pro-am events, they was giving a fully rigged, Ranger bass boat away at every event. So we really could win a lot of money. And those days are just gone. It's just not like that anymore. But when I think back and think that I won 40 fully rigged boats, it's pretty stinking insane. Every one of them was very special. And heck, they used to, the BAS events, their opens, they used to give a boat away to first, second, and third place. You won. There was, I mean, and the boats were at the site. You towed them home. I mean, my best year, I won 5. I had 1 year I won 5. I had another year, I think I had 2 years I won 4. Of course, I had several years I won none too. But it was it's to be able to win a boat was just such a, it's pretty darn special. I mean, and that's the way it did. I mean, John Murray's won 37 or 38. Aaron Martin's won, he's in the 20s, he just was younger before he went back east and started fishing back east. But very fortunate to fish when I did. Now I'm an old has-been, and I got a lot of aches and pains. I still love to fish. I just spent 4 days, believe it or not, with a guy named Eric Cagle, and we caught crappie. And I'm telling you guys, I had an absolute blast. I mean, there's a lot more action in bass fishing. It was crazy. And we caught a bunch of crappie in the 2.5 and a little bit better range. It was insane. Eric Cagle's a full-time guide, fishes 300 plus days, guides 300 plus days a year. I'm not going to tell you, he put us on them and we caught the crap on them. But the truth of it is, we fished all new water, lakes he had never been to, lakes I'd never been to. I'd never been to Toledo Bend in my life. That place is a fish factory. It's unbelievable how many fish is in Toledo Bend. And we hopped all through Arkansas and Louisiana. And I had 4 days. It was just absolutely a kick in the butt catching big crappie.
Awesome. Let's see. There was a question I was looking at here. It's Trevor, channel member. So he's looking for a couple rod recommendations. He's a kayak angler, looking for a new jerkbait rod and a jig rod. Fish all over West Texas. Fishing first tournament this year on Amistad. What's 2 rods you would recommend for jerkbaits and jigs out of a kayak?
Well, I mean, I'm going to say either the Kaden 610-4 CB or a 704 Champion for most of the jerk baits. And, kayak anglers, they still carry a fair amount of rods, and kayak fishing's got absolutely crazy. But you can't hardly go wrong with one of the 734s again, 734, 735. I've got the fish Amstead. I think it's pretty low still. Back when I fished it, the water was up, but it's really clear, a lot of salt cedars, a lot of brush, but a lot of big fish too. I mean, it had a lot of big fish in it. Amsterd's a great lake.
I think the one thing I hear consistent, I've never fished out of a kayak, is that they just like a little bit shorter handles for kayaks because they're like, I don't know. That's what I've heard. I don't really know.
Guys, I tell you what, we got asked so many times to build a kayak series of rods, and man, I tell you, I've went through so many questions and dealt with so many guys like, what is a kayak? What do I need for a kayak, or what's different? And it really came out that, I mean, everybody said you build it already. The Fury line, it's strong, it's durable. They run them into trees. And by the way, Bryce and Matt, both of the guys in my office that answers the phone a whole heck of a lot, those guys are, I mean, they are kayak tournament fishermen. And that's what they do, both of them. Actually, Matt he was a kayak guide fisherman where he actually had 6 kayaks, and he would guide 6 guys a day and go out and work with them. And I don't know anybody that does that, but he did that for a long time before he came to work for me. But I've got guys, Matt and Bryce in-house that are kayak tournament fishermen, and they say Furies, it doesn't get any better. I mean, it's a perfect kayak rod. The one thing, if I could make the one thing, and I played around with it, is they seem to, they drop a lot of rods overboard. If they had some kind of floating thing, then, something would float up. And I've tried to do that, and they all look really, really cheesy. I mean, there's some aftermarket ones you can put on there, but I didn't ever see anything that looked like it was a quality deal to me. You guys got
People
kayak
bring up-
questions? You got kayak questions. I
Oh,
got
nice.
two of the best guys in house right there already. You guys call them up, harass the crap out of them. They'll do their best for you.
Everybody that has kayak questions, dial up the shop, ask for Bryce. So I think last time you were coming off shoulder. How's the shoulder doing? Are you getting out and fishing more these days?
My shoulder's terrible, to be honest. I'm going to have a reverse shoulder replacement. But it's not. It's slowing me down for doing certain things, like throwing a jerk bait. I just can't do it. I want to throw a jerk bait with my left hand anymore. I will have that operation probably within the next year. But what's really slowed me down is I just built a new house, and I built it myself. I contracted it myself. I did a lot of work on it myself, and it really slowed me down. It took me 2 years. So my fishing has really been, pretty slow the last couple of years. But I am back on it this year. I'm fishing. Me and Bryce is going to fish a couple of team circuits there in Texas, and I'm going to get back to fishing. And honestly, guys, I really missed it. But it's amazing how out of shape you get. I am not in fishing shape. I just spent 4 days on the water and realized I'm not in fishing shape. So I've got to work my way back into that. But I'm going to fish a lot more this year.
Nice. All right. There's been I don't get BFS. I'm more of a spinning rod guy. What's the first and second BFS rod to buy? What are the popular ones in the lineup?
Oh my gosh. We built that. We were so strong with that. And then I know at ICAST this year there was like 6 different companies that come out with us. But I call it the ultimate finesse, just so I stayed off of that BFS name, because I honestly didn't know if somebody had trademarked that or not, and I didn't want to deal with it. But the Sierra 700 is awesome, and we just really couldn't keep the 700, and I built a 7'4", and I couldn't hardly keep that in stock. We finally got ahead now, but it was crazy. We'd have dealers standing by and say, "I'll take every one you get." We sold so many of those things. And the first time they told me, "You need to build a BFS rod," I had to ask, what the heck is a BFS rod? Because I didn't even know. And it's basically a super ultimate casting rod that'll cast little bitty tiny baits. And they're super fun to fish with. You're fishing a super light action rod. These guys are fishing, 2, 3, 4, 5 pound test line and casting little bitty tiny baits. But the 7-footer and the 7'4" we sell absolutely tons of them. We have more models now too. I expanded that line, but that's the 2 that was so popular that always sticks in my mind.
So David asks, Loomis and St. Croix used to offer blanks to rod builders, but they've stopped. Is it just like a profit margin thing that companies don't do much for custom blanks anymore? I don't know. Have you ever thought about doing custom blanks to rod builders?
We really, really broke up there.
Yeah.
Rich, I'm not sure what you said. You said I heard custom blanks, and
yeah.
So
have you ever thought about
if I'm going to do blanks? I think that's what you're going to ask me.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about doing blanks for rod builders?
I've thought about it a lot. One of my best friends in the world is Lynn Williams with Williams Custom Rods. Absolutely phenomenal, great guy. Really the guy that got me into this whole rod building craze a long time ago. He's a personal friend. He lived here in Yuba City with me. He sold out and he retired and moved back to Kentucky in like 2006. We still stay in touch. He's a great friend of mine. I talk to him all the time. He's asked me a lot about making blanks. And I'll tell you, the thing about it is like what these guys charge for blanks today, I think is ridiculous, to be honest with you. the price to build custom rods is freaking outrageous. I mean, especially if you take a guy like Lynn. Lynn is the most anal rod builder I know. Dude, if you buy a rod through Lynn Williams, that sucker is going to be dead nuts perfect. Every thread's going to be perfect. I mean, he's so anal, it's unbelievable. But what the price that he has to pay for the blanks, it makes it just insane. I know he sends me so many customers. He goes like, dude, you need to go buy a Dobyns rod. I mean, I can't. I'm gonna charge you, $600-700 to build a rod like that. You can go buy it from Gary, buy a Champion for $250. So Lynn sends a lot of guys my way all the time. It's the price of these blanks is ridiculous, and I could get into the blank business. Maybe I will. I've talked about it. I've kicked it around for many, many years, but I just don't know how many really custom builders there is out there right now. I just don't know. But Lynn is, if anybody wants a custom one, Lynn Williams is the deal.
Speaking of which, Lynn says, how do you determine the number of guides on a rod?
Well, I mean, most of the guys operate off this Fuji concept guide system. That's kind of the standard. I usually start with that and add one, and sometimes add two. I don't like line slap on the blank. If you're line slapping your blank on the cast, it's going to cut down on your cast distance and stuff. And so I usually have an extra one or two guides over this quote Fuji concept guide system, which is the standard. It's pretty much what everybody uses. I just add 1 to 2 guides to it.
Makes sense. Chris says, who's your biggest dealer in California? I mean, this would probably be outside of Tackle Warehouse. Standalone dealer.
Warehouse.
So yeah, what about like a walk-up somewhere,
I guess? In California?
Oh my God. Maybe a couple of them. I don't know, popular ones.
Oh gosh, we got, Fisherman's Warehouse. I mean, they sell a lot of rods for me. Fisherman's Warehouse is strong. Outdoor pro shops. Gosh, you guys are going to get me in trouble with this question bad. We've got so many. My favorite dealers are the mom and pops because you can actually build a rapport with them. I mean, I get prank phone calls and stuff from them. I mean, you can, I called your office on a Saturday. You're so highfalutin, you're not working on Saturdays. Well, it's fun. You can build a rapport with your independents, and your mom and pop pro shops, I call them, are really the best. They're really struggling right now. I just found out we just lost another one yesterday. Hook, Line, and Sinker down on the California Delta is going out of business. It's a shame that's been there forever and ever and ever. But Tackle Warehouse, for sure, in California, I think Tackle Warehouse is everybody's number one dealer.
That's an interesting question. How do you decide to pair a reel with a rod? Should you balance, like, $100 rod, $100 reel? Should you spend more on a rod, more on a reel? What's your opinion on that, Gary?
I think I honestly always think it should be more on the rod. The rod's where all your sensitivity is and everything, and the reel is basically, yeah, you need a good drag, but gosh, guys, today the drag systems are so good. Like, even a $69, $79 spinning reel, $99 spinning reel, the drags are phenomenal. I mean, put your money in the rod, and honestly, I have a series of reels out now, and I'll tell you, Josh Jones, who just went to Idaho a few months back, he took some of my reels, and he had a company send him their highest end. It was a $600 2500 spinning reel, and he fished it side by side with mine. Josh is never gonna, we got a great working work. I hate somebody to bullshit me. I want the truth, and he told me straight up, the only difference between that $600 reel and my $99 reel, the only difference was weight. And obviously that's the case. I mean, you're using, really light materials, titanium and stuff. But as far as the drag system and everything, he said it was the same. Absolutely the same. And so without a doubt, put your money in the rod for sure. If the reel holds lines, and as long as it casts good and has a decent drag, the rod is the sensitivity and the feel and everything. And as far as balance, I'd try to balance the rod out. All the reels are within, dude, they're within an ounce or two. So it's not that big a deal. If you balance the rod, most of the reels are going to balance out really well on the rod.
I did see one question earlier. I don't know where it went, but any plans for upper? Because I think all your reels right now are $100 reels. Is there any plans in the works for another series of reels and a step up or not?
I've thought about it. The reason we did the reels, to be honest with you guys, what started that was, through that pandemic deal, and everybody was buying combos, and so we had so many requests for combos, and we didn't build them, and that's what started that. But the trouble is, I couldn't build a decent reel, and because I'm not going to build a piece of crap, I'm just not going to do it. And so I built this reel at $99, and I'll tell you, the bad deal is I had a dealer order 28,000 of them, wanted them ASAP. I air shipped them in, and then they canceled a PO on me. So, guys, I'm sitting on quite a few stinking reels right now. So if anyone wants some reels, give me a yell. I've got a lot of them. That dealer really, that was a really, really bad deal for us. And it wasn't over quality or anything like that. The reels, honestly, are really solid. We're just not seeing returns on them. We're doing really, really well with them. We just don't sell enough of them, truthfully. We're a rod company. We're a rod company, not a reel company.
Yeah, I got one. Picked one up to check it out. I threw it on my Topwater Fury 703, and that thing wings a popper like nobody's business. If anything, it's like getting it dialed down, like because it wants to rip. Yeah. Like it's a long casting reel for sure.
Yep. I will tell you, the reels are so small. I've got 12 or 13 bearings and a roller in them. they're an overbuilt reel, but you have to use that cast control. If you don't, you're going to backlash. But once you got that thing, tuned down where you can cast it, those things have cast a mile. It's a phenomenal casting reel. It's super, super smooth. But if you don't, I pick a reel up and think I can cast a reel. I'm a professional fisherman. I can throw. Well, let me tell you, I can get a professional overrun on it just as quick too. Especially if you're using braided line.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Gaff asks, when designing your rods, how do you take into account castability versus fish biting the fish? Does that philosophy account for the many fast action rods you offer?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that truthfully.
I guess maybe just your philosophy on rod.
My philosophy is I want a rod it's got enough tip action where I can accurately cast it. Like some of these rods, some of the companies, once they build a really, a 5-power rod, a mag heavy rod, or there's not enough tip action, and they don't cast for crap. You'll have to learn to alter your cast a little bit. I believe they should cast good, but then they got to load back into the blank, and a really smooth load transition is my deal. I want them to cast good, but I want them to be able to load. And, that's the reason we make some, like I said, the champion 733s and 734s, they're on the slower side of fast. Where on some of my rods, like if you grab a Fury 734, it's a lot faster than a champion 734. It's just because, again, I built that 734 Champ as my Super Spook rod. So the actions are going to vary a little bit. Gosh, it's just hard. It's hard. That's a hard question for me to answer. The actions are going to be different. Each series, the actions is going to be a little bit different. They're going to be fairly close, but they're going to have some tip in them where they can cast. And I just don't really believe in fishing with a broomstick, even though I fish some stout, heavy action rods. Even my heavy action rods, I wanted to be able to cast. My favorite all-time rod is the 736 Champion. It's basically a pitch and stick frog rod. That's exactly all it is. And it is extra fast. And when I picked that rod up, the first couple of casts, till I get used to it, because it's so powerful. It's so powerful that it doesn't cast near as well as like the 735 does. But I can get used to it. I can adjust it. And honest to God, it's the favorite rod I build. It's hard to have a rod at 7'3", 6 power that has that kind of power and is that well balanced. That thing just floats in your hand, and yet it has got brutal power. It's my favorite rod.
Dad Bod, do you think the DX742 has enough backbone to handle up to finesse jigs up to a ½ ounce?
No, I would not do a 742 on that. I'd definitely do a 3 or a 4. A 2's just not gonna. It just doesn't have enough. You're not gonna get enough penetration on a hook set. You're gonna lose a lot of fish.
I mean, like, I would say like maybe like a K-Tech, like if super finessey, like micro jig, yes, maybe, but finesse jigs, I'd go at least a 3.
Yeah,
So
yeah, but ½ ounce. That's they need to bump up in a 3 or a 4 power.
speaking of that, why is the jig special in the HP such a long rod?
Well, honestly, we did it because mainly for dragging. We're dragging. It was a rod that was really made for the West, where we're dragging 50, 60 feet of water, and boat dragging 3/4 and 1 ounce jigs. And that longer rod, we just you pick up more line on the hook set, the extra fast tip loads quicker, and the rod was pretty much built for the West. But I mean, they use it everywhere. I mean, I have a lot of guys that pitch baits with it all the time. I have a lot of guys throwing swim jigs on it too. Down in Texas and Louisiana and stuff. It's a pretty popular swim jig rod.
Are you a proponent of sealing cork?
I am, but I don't do it. Yes, it doesn't hurt anything. It helps everything. It keeps the filler, from falling out of. We try to use as least amount of fill as we can, but that's just the way cork is today. But I am a big proponent, and there's several different ones out there on the market that work really well.
Yeah, I've always just used sweat and fish slime to seal my cork.
That works too.
I don't know. I feel like I've got a ton of like Dobyns rods that are 10 years old, and I don't know, seem fine to me. But
I don't. Yeah, there's just I like saying this. It offends some guys sometimes, but some of these guys will send a rod back in, and I'm like, guys, do you sleep with this rod or do you fish with this rod? I mean, are you sleeping with this thing? I mean, are you using it? And most guys will laugh. I've offended a couple of guys with it, but I mean, sometimes that we'll get a rod set back in and just like I can't find something wrong with that cork. I don't know what it is, but we'll send a new one out and make it a refurb. And I mean, most of my boat, mostly that's what I've got, refurbs or sample rods. That's what I fish with. I seen somebody
Morgan,
come on and says, I really sleep with my rods.
He says, I love drop shotting smallmouth in the Great Lakes with my Sierra spinning rods. Due to their hard charging nature, that's the smallies, am I really missing out that much by not using a Champion or an Extreme or a Ecstasy model?
The sensitivity factor is definitely going to be better. I would say buy the best that you can afford. But I tell you guys, I try to build and balance all my rods. Again, I use Mitsubishi Toray materials. As I go up, I'll go up in tonnages. Like, I mean, I just built a crappie rod that's got some 40-ton material in it. And when you come out of the Sierra, you're going to jump up. And I'm just going to throw some oddball numbers. But say the Sierra's got it's got 30% 24-ton and 35% 30-ton and 20% 40-ton. I know that don't even add up. Well, then when you jump to a Champion, you're going to probably not have the 24-ton. You're going to have 30% 30-ton, 60% 40-ton or something. And it's just the level of graphite jumps up. And also the grade of cork jumps up when you get into Champion Extremes. But I promise you I could catch fish on the Sierra really, really good. But then again, once you get your hand on that Ecstasy, you are freaking burnt. And that thing is just unbelievable. I mean, that Toray T1100, and the big part of that rod is those Torzite Fuji guides. I mean, those things, they're so light. It's just unbelievable. They just changed the whole feel of a rod. I mean, I've took a couple of my own personal rods and stripped them and had Torzite guides put on them. It completely changes the whole feel of the rod. It's just unbelievable. But those things are expensive. Like a number 25 guide on a spinning rod, the very first guide, we call it the stripper guide. If you buy that guide retail, it's $60 for that one guide. And, you know, I'll be honest. I mean, my price is I pay 50% of that. So my cost on that guide is $30. But and you think that's one single guide, and you got to put a whole string of them up through there. So I mean, it really jacks the price up. That's what earlier when I was talking about some of these companies and what they charge with for the blanks, I think is ridiculous, because the guides is where you can spend a ton of money. Is on the guides. And Fuji Torzites are, dude, they're just badass. I mean, they changed the whole feel of a rod.
Josh, would you recommend a Champ 735 or the 744 for a football jig rod? Currently using a 705 Champ, wants a little more length.
I would probably use the 744 if I was throwing it just straight up for a jig rod. The 735, I have a bunch of guys. I mean, one of my good buddies, Phil Strader, he uses the 735 for jig rod. He likes it. It's extra fast. It's powerful. It's a phenomenal rod. But the 744, I think for a straight up cast and jig rod is probably a little bit better, but they're both damn good. And just for a little crazy knowledge, the 735 Champion, you know, for years we only had Champion and Champion Extreme. That's the only two series we had. And for the first like 7 or 8 years, our number one selling rod was a Champion 735. It outsold. The 34 was number 2. The number 1 was a Champion 735 because it's so powerful, extra fast tip. Guys could use it for a frog rod to cast small swim baits with it. You could, you know, it's still to this day my son's personal chatterbait rod. I mean, there's just so many things you can do with it.
Thomas B, best Dobyns rod for 3/8 ounce spinnerbait.
Oh, probably a 734 Champion. A lot of guys are going to throw a 33 or 34. Either one of them. It's just going to depend. I like a 4, but a lot of guys would probably throw a 3. And you know, it's kind of crazy because 3/8 spinnerbaits are really popular, like, you know, up where you guys are, and even in, you know, down where I'm at in Texas. But in the West, you couldn't give away 3/8 ounce spinnerbait. Everything is 1/2 and 3/4. Crazy. Just different parts of the country.
Yeah. Looks like Dustin got off work. What's the best shaky head rod, Kaden and up?
Biggest question is spinning or casting. That's the deal.
I think spinning.
Because
if
it's in here, in California, we're gonna throw a spinning. And the best, dude, I tell you what, you're not gonna beat that 753 Ecstasy. I mean, that's a rod that I have a love affair with. And I'll tell you, this is a long story. I'll try to make it shorter. I was a fourth company that was licensed to use that 3M material many, many years ago. And you had to go through a whole licensing process. And I bought a bunch of it. And then Pure Fishing bought the rights to it. But I had all this material, and it was phenomenal. And we made a bunch of rods. And honest to God, guys, I couldn't sell them because I'm not going to be able to get more of them. So I actually sent them. They went out to my pro staff only. And my son had a 6 of them. I had a 6 of them. And it was a 753, and it was an awesome rod. And when I made the Ecstasy 753, it was better. And I kept telling my son, this rod is better. And he's so hard-headed, he would not try it. So finally, one day, I just threw a rod and a reel rigged in his boat at Lake Shasta. And I said, fish it and tell me at the end of the day, he goes, Dad, I need 5 more of those. The Ecstasy 753 for shaky head rod, I don't think you can get better.
I think obviously $550 rod is not in everybody's budget, but
exactly.
I think any of the 3-power spinning rods, you find the length that fits what you like and your price point, 3-power spinning rod is a good shaky headed rod.
And if I had to pick my second best, it would be a Champion 733 spinning. And again, it's one of those old extreme blanks that when I made a 7'3" rod, I just pulled that blank into the Champion line and re-guided it. That's the rod that we were using before we were using that 3M rod. That's the exact rod we used for years. But you can, any of those 3-power spinning rods. I like a 7.3, 7.4, 7.5. I like a little bit longer rod for shaky head, but you're not going to go wrong with any of them. But the Ecstasy is just on a different planet. But it's also $550.
Yeah. Stoby 723, it's a good one.
So a lot of them. I'm just a guy that I just always like longer rods. But there's a great following in that 7'2" range though.
What guy doesn't want a little bit extra length in the rod, right? I mean,
for me, I just really like a long rod.
Morgan checking in from his calc lecture wants to know about any new high-end swim bait rod plans.
That is probably going to happen sooner than later. I've actually got Bryce doing some checking with a bunch of these, swim bait guys. I mean, truthfully, guys, I don't really see the need for it. I think the Champion, that's a high-end blank. I don't see the need for it, but I am seeing way too many requests, and guys are wanting, a higher-end swim bait rod. And I mean, it's if they're going to pay $500 for a bait, they'll pay $300 or $400 for a rod too. I've just never felt that you've needed that. I mean, most of the time it's swim bait fishing, they dang near take the rod out of your hand. It's not a sensitivity deal anyway. But I am getting far, far too many requests for a higher end swim bait rod, and you're probably going to see it within the next year from me. We like to test them. Lord knows I've got Bryce in house, and he liked nothing better than test swim bait rods. So he's actually putting together a list of what we should do for higher end rods for me right now, and I'm going to start working on them. Strictly because of request. That's the only reason. Again, I don't think we need them. I don't think fishermen need them, but fishermen want them. That's all that matters to me. If they want them, I'm going to build them.
Well, Troy checking in from South Dakota. He loves what you're doing with Dobyns rods. Kind of a more open-ended question. What makes you most excited looking ahead about the future of the business?
I just don't see fishing going away. I mean, the high school fishing has just really got so many, the more younger, it's just really pushing the young anglers into, some competitive fishing. I think really right now that worries me. The competitive fishing is just not where it used to be, like in the 90s and early 2000s. I think it slid a lot, but there's that fun factor fishing tournaments. I mean, I don't care if it's a club tournament or, a lot of turkey shoots. There's tons of tournaments in Texas where they're running, 60, 80 boats and tons of tournaments. And you can go out and you can fun fish and you can catch a 6 or 7 pound fish. And it's an awesome fish. And I mean, gosh, it's beautiful. Look at this fish. But when you catch a 6 or 7 fish in a tournament, I mean, there's nothing like that rush. I mean, like, oh my God, don't come off, go get him, don't miss him with the net, get him, and it's just a whole different deal. And I think with the high schools, with what they're doing with the high school tournaments and stuff, people get so excited. I mean, like I said, it's not catching a 5 pound fish it's great, but catching a 5 pound fish in a tournament, that's a whole different deal. And I think it's gonna keep guys going. And I've always considered our rod company to be more for, a more serious anglers. Yeah, we build some, lesser priced rod like the Maverick. The Maverick's a phenomenal rod. It's a straight 24-ton Mitsubishi product, and it's phenomenal. For $99, I swear you cannot beat it. But it gets guys in, and then pretty soon they're fishing Sierras, or fishing Champions, or fishing Extremes, and But I'd say the biggest thing that got me excited is the high school, because that thing's still growing like crazy. That has not slowed down. And it's I mean, everybody knows the way our world's going. I don't want to start talking politics, but we need all these kids out fishing and hunting and doing the things that we've all got to grow up doing, and we need more of it. And high school fishing is an outlet for it, getting kids in, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I just donated a bunch of tackle to a local high school club last night. And I love, if there's any high school clubs listening, I love speaking to high school clubs. So if you're in my area, you want me to come in person, or if you're not in my area, I would be glad to do a virtual like seminar speaking. So always reach out if there's any high school coaches. But Bill wants to know, he's got a high school kid getting on the fishing team. What's 3 rods would be a good starter kit for a high school angler?
You know, I do a 703 spinning. I'd probably do a 734, and the next one would be a tough. It would depend on how the kid really likes to fish. You might want something longer for a Carolina rig. It would be, but definitely do a 3-power spinning rod, 4-power casting rod, and probably a good crankbait rod, maybe a 705. And guys, we sell a lot of crankbait rods. Our number one selling rod in the entire Dobyns deal, our number one selling rod is a Fury 705 CB. That is our single number one selling rod. Not sure why, other than it's a phenomenal crankbait rod. I mean, it really is, but it's our number one selling rod and has been for many years. We sell a lot of them. I mean, so we're kind of known for our crankbait stuff, but you know, a good crankbait rod, a good 4-power jig rod is so versatile over so many things, and probably a 3-power spinning rod. And I think it'd be a good start.
Yeah. I'm actually thinking about, I got 2 704 champions, and I find myself using my 705 champ more. So I'm thinking about swapping out one of my 74s and dropping down to the Fury to check it out, because I've never fished one, but I see them. Yeah. So.
And personally, I have a love affair going with the 704 CB for like throwing Stacy's, Vision 110s, you know, those kind of baits. I mean, that rod is just absolutely perfect for me. I mean, I love it. It just fits me absolutely perfect. It's limber enough that, you know, it loads slow enough, but I mean, I can work those baits, and when you jerk it, I mean, all of a sudden he's there, and you just load up, and they rarely come off. I mean, it's just a phenomenal rod. Me personally, because I can walk out in the warehouse and grab whatever rod I want, you know, I throw the 4 and the 6. I really don't throw the 5-power. But if you're going to do one, I say do the 5, because it'll cover everything. But me, I throw the 4-power and I throw the 6-power on the bigger baits, like the Pointer 128s and, you know, and some of the bigger baits. Like, I mean, I still got some of the old Mag 18s that I absolutely love. I caught so many big fish on them. So I throw the 4 and the 6. I really don't throw the 5. But if I was only going to have one crankbait rod, or if I didn't have the ability to walk out and grab, I would do a 705.
It seems like I've been throwing more of the media, like the MRs and the 110+1s. I like the 5 more than the 4 for those. So I've been gravitating to my 705s more. Along that same lines, Thomas has best rod for DT6. I like the 704 for a DT6.
Yeah, agreed.
But if you're on a budget, the 705 Fury will do a really great job as well.
It'll do an outstanding job.
It spins up there. Any interest in getting into musky rods? And I guess, I don't know, are musky rods different than like a 7-power swim bait rod? Like,
yes, yes, they are. The only reason I can tell you, guys, I've never caught a muskie. I've never seen one up close except for in tanks. But Josh Jones, a good friend of mine, has went up on these muskie trips, and he's throwing the 908 swim bait rod, and he tells me it's not enough rod. And he's wanting me to make a muskie rod. I just don't know that we'd sell enough of them. But that 908 is a club. That thing is super stout. And he sent me videos. I mean, them stinking muskie, I mean, they bend that thing right down like it's nothing. So I think you need more something along the lines of even a pretty heavy inshore type rod. You know, you're going to get into these musky rods. I mean, the one, I mean, he brought one. He goes, "This is what these guys are using." Dude, that thing was like a pool cue with eyes on it. Them muskies, I mean, they're a big, tough fish, and they're throwing big baits, and you need a really big rod. When he told me the 908 wasn't enough, I couldn't believe it.
Hard to build a rod for something like as much, hearing you talk about stories on how you design rods, it would probably feel pretty foreign for you to build something that you don't have any like hands-on experience, right? Like when you built the crappie rods, you went out crappie fishing and learned what made a good crappie rod. So it'd be a stretch for you to be like, I'm going to build a muskie rod without being like, oh, I'm going to go spend 3 summers in Minnesota, Wisconsin fishing for muskies to learn what it's all about, right? But that's probably not going to come anytime soon with your shoulder.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I like to build stuff that I know. I mean, I know what I'm building. I know what I'm building them for. And bass is easy. I'm really pushed really hard to build an inshore series of lines, and I'm pretty close to pulling that trigger. But I mean, again, that's not a lot different than what some of our bass rods are. It's just not a lot difference. I mean, I could build those easy, and I tell you, one of my biggest holdbacks is this is going to be the stupidest thing anybody will hear today. But I mean, I've got a bunch of dealers that are wanting me to build them for them, but they tell me I can't use my logo because it's got a bass on it. And those inshore guys are not going to buy a rod that's got a bass on it. And my logo's got a bass behind it. And that just totally spun me out right there. I'm like, well, it's my logo. How the heck do I get around? I'm going to have to make a different logo just for an inshore rod. And I tell you, honest God, as crazy as it sounds, that just kind of stopped me in my tracks right there. Heck, it's my logo. I mean, it took me a long time to perfect that logo. I mean, I think it's cool. I think it's a great logo. And the fact that the inshore guys are that crazy that they wouldn't buy a rod because it had a bass behind the logo. I probably shouldn't have said that, but that's the truth.
Chris jumping in as a member. He came late, so we know we talked about the Fury being the #1 seller. What's the next 5 top selling rods, or roughly? I mean, if you're not exactly, but give us a couple of the other top 5 selling rods.
Oh, top 5 selling rods. Champion 734 for sure. Probably, I mean, honestly, they're probably all the Fury line, Fury 734, 705 CB, and believe it or not, the 795 SB. I mean, there's a lot of guys that throw swim baits, but they're not diehard swim bait fishermen, or they throw it for A rigs. So those 3 are probably our 1, 2, and 3. Then I would say it's Champ 734, 735 Champ's right in there close. 703 Champ spinning is right in there too. But some of these things the numbers are so close. Like we sell a ton of like that 610-4 jerkbait rod in the Kaden series, which I fought building for years. I didn't really see a need for a 6'4" when I got 7-footers, but I might have said this. It's like, I think I said it last time, but at ICAST, these guys, all these riders was beating me up about this 610 jerkbait rod. And I'm like, guys, I don't understand. I mean, 7 foot, 610. I mean, I said, and I will say it may be bad. I said exactly what I said. Guys, 2 inches in the end of your dick, that's a big deal. 2 inches in the end of a fishing pole, that ain't such a big damn deal. Now, maybe I shouldn't have said that on live, but that's exactly what I said to those riders, and they all started laughing. But I don't really see the difference of 2 inches on a jerkbait rod. But let me tell you, we sell the crap out of 610-4 CB rods for jerkbaits.
Good perspective. The chat.
And if I offended anybody with that, I apologize. But it's just true. It's just what I said.
Nice. Well, we're right at 2 hours. How you doing, Gary? You got a few more questions in you, or?
Dude, I'm fine. I mean, guys, I talk. One of the greatest things about my job is I get to talk fishing rods, and I get to talk to bass fishermen every day. I mean, that's one of the biggest pluses to my job. You know, I mean, what's better than talking to fishermen all day or talking rods, talking boats, you know? I mean, it just doesn't get much better than that. And I've always said that bass fishermen, especially bass fishermen, they love to fish and they love to shoot the bull. And I'm not sure which one they like better. It and that's what makes it so easy to promote with bass rods. I mean, fishermen talk about what they like, talk about what they don't like, you know, but I mean, they're very honest, very open. You know, we're lucky enough to get a lot of feedback from anglers, and honestly, I listen to it, and it's great. It's fun.
Right on. Yeah, and that's, I mean, honestly, that's why I like doing these shows, is talking to, you know, whether it's pro anglers or guides or guys like yourself, Gary. Like, it's just fun hanging out and talking fishing. So
Yeah. The only thing that I think is better than that is I think back to, you know, like is helping guys catch fish. I mean, I've always really liked to help guys catch fish, especially, I mean, one thing that stuck in my mind forever and ever and ever. And I mean, I bought an old rental houseboat and rebuilt it and had it on Orville. And I fished around this cove one morning, caught a bunch of fish, and I'm sitting there on the back deck reading a book, and I watched this guy and his son fish all the way around that cove, and they never caught a fish. And as they come by me and they talk about how bad fishing was, so I put them in my boat and we went back around that thing. And I just taught those guys how to shake a dart head with a robo-worm on it, and they caught a pile of fish. And they were so stinking happy. It was unbelievable. And I still run into those guys at shows. Of course, that kid then was like 8 or 9, and now he's in early 20s. But comes back and said, man, we took that technique and we took it everywhere we go. We catch fish on it. And, you know, getting kids catching fish is pretty stinking awesome. And you hook them. I mean, you know, my good buddy Josh Jones, he just put a kid on like a 10-0 something and a 12.54 2 days ago. That kid's 11 years old. That kid is hooked for life, guaranteed. And but getting the youth involved is just a big deal. I love to help people catch fish. And you know, we go out fishing, and all of us that fish a lot, you know, that old saying about 90% of fishermen or 10% of the fishermen catch 90% of the fish is probably true, because we fish it in all conditions. We're always fishing. There's a lot of guys that go fishing 3, 4, 5 times a year. And, you know, they don't get to catch a lot of fish. And if you can help them catch a few more fish and get them hooked, maybe next time they're going 10 or 12 times a year. And we just need to get more and more people involved in the sport. I mean, I don't know how your state is, but like Texas puts a lot of money and effort into their fishing programs or freshwater. You know, California and stuff, they put $0 into their warm water fisheries. They'll stock trout and kokanee and stuff, but they don't do nothing for bass. Texas does a ton for bass. And it's the reason we have so many good fisheries down there. And for every lake that you hear of, like Rayburn, Toledo, or Fork, dude, there's friggin' 50 right around there that nobody's heard of. They're not near as big, but they got just as big a fish in them. It's phenomenal. Texas does an outstanding job with that share and lunker program. They really do.
yeah, we have a bountiful resource of water up here in Minnesota, where there's just, I mean, we have endless, I don't know, 2 to 4 pounders up here. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, you guys just have a shorter growing season for them. That's the only thing that holds it back up there. You guys just have a shorter growing season. Yeah, that water just gets a little hard.
So speaking of helping people catch more fish, let's answer a question. North State wants to know top 3 baits for Shasta in the winter.
Back in the day, spinnerbait and jerkbait would have been my number 1 and number 2. But nowadays, right now, well, my son just fished a tournament last weekend. There's an A-rig was really good. Caught a lot of fish on an A-rig. Caught a lot of fish on a shaky head. And Richie's not a big dart head fisherman and drop shot fisherman anymore, but there was a lot of fish caught on that. But I will tell you this about Shasta. Shasta's on the upswing. The weights are good. Not that there's a lot of big fish getting caught, but there's a ton of quality fish getting caught. I mean, when the majority of the pack is averaging 2.5 pound fish on Shasta, that's really, really good. And a couple of years ago, heck, if you could average, 9 pounds, you were doing good. But right now, it's taking a 2.5 pound average, and you're not even going to get a check. And that's fishing really, really strong for Lake Shasta. And I think, part of it is that lake was down, really down 100+ feet for a couple of years. And then it filled, and all that new growth in there. And basically, you get what I call a new lake syndrome. I mean, you got so much fresh growth in that lake. It's so good for the bait fish. It's so good for, for all the forage, but yet it's really good for all the bass and the fry and everything too. So Shasta's on a big upswing right now. Actually, I think probably all the NorCal lakes are. But the weights at Shasta last weekend, they surprised me. My son sent me a text message. Have you ever seen weights like this on Shasta? It's that good. So they've got a pro-am up there this weekend. Guys, it's going to take some weight to do it, and you're going to have a ball doing it.
So I have no idea what this is about, but people keep on asking about a burnout at Shasta.
A burnout at Shasta?
It says, tell us about the burnout, Gary, at Shasta. I don't know.
I don't know if they're talking about the fire, possibly. Shasta burned. It's California, man. They don't manage their forest. They burn and stuff like that. But it hasn't affected the fishing. I will tell you that Shasta's clear. Fishing is as good as it's ever been. Not seen as many. That lake is loaded with gigantic spotted bass, but it's just, gosh dang it, they're hard to catch. And if you get dirty water, you're going to catch them. But Shasta is a clear lake, and those suckers get smart. I mean, they've got swim baits thrown to them and thrown to them. When we first started throwing swim baits up there, it was absolutely insane. I mean, I promise you, I had a day up there. Where I fished with a guy named Mark Meddock, and we caught probably 20 fish over 5 pounds. I called my son Richard and said, "You got to come see this." And the very first, we both threw on a point that morning, had double hook up on 5.5 pound spotted bass. And, we caught the first day with the biggest was 8.15. The second day we had numerous 7+ pound fish. But we never caught an 8. We had a lot of 5 and 6 pound fish, but the water was dirty. Conditions were perfect. It was early March. It was insane. But now, like last weekend, they just had a big tournament up there, and the big fish was 4 pounds. Those big spots are in there. They're just stinking hard to catch unless the conditions are just right. It's a phenomenal. I love Shasta. It's one of my favorite all-time bodies of water to fish. It's big. It's got big spots in it. It's got big largemouth in it. It's just a great lake.
Oh man, the questions just never stop. What rod are people throwing for the KGB Chad Shad? Like this? I mean, again, it doesn't have to be like that. I guess that 6-7 inch chop glide.
I'll be honest with you, I'm not familiar with that bait.
Maybe like the Buka Trick Shad, if you know that one.
I don't even know that one. I really don't. If it's just a glide bait, 6-inch glide bait, I'd say 794, 794.5. 6 inches. I mean, if the guys that give me weight of the bait, I can tell you quickly. But if I just don't know a lot of, there's so many swim bait companies now, and there's so many different ones. And Bryce is up on all of them. That's like earlier I said, I just send all the swim bait questions to Bryce because he's dialed in. But if you tell me the weight of the bait, I can tell you what rod will throw it.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. What was that question? I had one that was looking. All right. Ryan. Best rod for drag and dark sleepers, 1/2 and 3/4 ounce, extreme or ecstasy?
You're never gonna do wrong with the ecstasy. It's just, you're paying $200 more, and it's the price of it's predominantly in the guides. The Extreme's got T1000, the ecstasy's got T1100. I mean, T1100 is obviously better, but how much better? I mean, they are really, really close. The big deal is the guides. Um, you're gonna do really well with either one of those. If you're dragging that heavy a jig, I would say drag a 5.4 or a 5 power for sure.
So either
Longer, like a 750.
45, 755, 725.
Yeah, I jumped into the seven. I need to do a 745 DX. It's got a little softer tip on that 45. That's why I said if you went into the X, you could do either 754 or 755. You could do a 725, but that's what if you like the shorter rods. I just like longer rods.
Mm-hmm. So I think you said you like your main jerkbait rod's a 704, right? I think you touched on that.
That's my main jerkbait rod, is 704 CB Champion. That's my main jerkbait rod.
Yeah. So there are some people that, like myself, have always used the Extreme 705 as a dock skipping jig rod. What is the best replacement for that?
Well, I made that dock skipping rod in the Champion series, which was it was a 610. Boy, I mean, I'm struggling now. We got so many stinking models. I think I call it a 610.
Dash.
God, man, now I'm
610
struggling. I
dash
want to say
4.
4.5 or something. I think it's
it's
a
just a
4.5 power
610
rod.
Yeah.
It's
a 610 4 is the model.
Yeah, but it's really, really about a 4.5. It's a little heavier. It's one of those things. I hate to even say this, guys, but I hate to say marketing wise, but I'll just say marketing wise. If I called it a 5 power, we wouldn't sell as many of them. I call it a 4 power, we sell a lot of them. But I knew it needed to be more than a 4, so it's about a 4.5. So I still called it a 4. But we sell a lot. But there's a lot of guys use that for a straight up casting jig rod too. That rod was instantly very, very popular for us, and a lot more techniques than just dock skipping, which is what it was made for. It's a great rod for us. Matter of fact, I sold out of it, and I mean it's one of the rods that I didn't expect to go like it did, and I got in trouble with it right off the bat. It took me a while to get caught up on it. It's a really popular rod for us.
Yeah, I think I would not be inclined to go down 2 inches. So
Yeah.
I don't know. How does the 705 Champion or the 715 Kaden, would those be like similar actions to the 705 Extreme or not?
They'd be very similar actions, but it's just that the majority of the guys were fighting the length of the rod for the dock skipping. That was the thing, is the length of the rod. That was a fight, because I had a bunch of guys saying 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", and some other guys were saying 6'10". 6'10" seemed to be the number that I heard the most. It needed to be sub 7 foot. And so that's what I did. And I'll be honest with you guys, we got docks on Clear Lake, but I didn't grow up skipping docks. And
Yeah.
I mean, I can skip docks, but I promise you there's a lot of guys that are a whole heck of a lot better at it than I am. I've just never really had to do it a whole lot. Now, when I did it with a long rod.
Yeah. A lot of people like that 610 dock skipping rod, but I think if my my Extreme breaks, I'll probably try a Kaden 715.
Yeah. And again, it
Or
comes down to
I'll get a 725. We'll see.
it's just that like some of the companies, and one company I worked with for a long time. I'll even say, I worked with G. Loomis for a long time. I have great things to say about that company. But the one thing that they did that drove me about half insane was, like, they made a rod that was 7'5", 3 power, and it was an awesome rod. But that was the only 7 foot, 5 rod they made. And I'm like, I wanted one in a 4 power, I wanted one in a 5 power. Maybe I want one in a 2 power. And so a lot of the companies will make, like, a rod with a power, a length, and a power. And it drove me crazy. So that's one of the reasons when, if I will have a rod that will fit your need. If you get a 4-power and it ain't enough, I'll have a 5. If you think it's too much, I will have a 3. And you can really dial into your style of fishing because everybody has their own likes and dislikes. They have an action that fits them, a power that fits them. One of the guys I fish with, he throws half-ounce jigs on a Champion 733, and it drives me absolutely nuts. But when we were fishing Berryessa a couple of years ago, I picked it up and I caught him just fine with it. But it was just not a heavy enough rod for what I want a jig rod. He loves it though, and I'm not going to talk him out of it. He loves that 733. I don't think it's the right rod to throw a jig on, and I caught him on it. I caught him fine on it, but I really think if I would hit a really big fish that had a lot of bone in his mouth, I'm not sure I would have got enough hook penetration to catch that fish. But again, it's having enough models where a guy can get exactly what they want.
Then a couple questions about the 725. Is that what? I mean, obviously 3 inches difference between 725 and 755. Are the actions any different?
The actions are a little bit different, and the 755 has got more power than the 725. It really is. It's more of a 755.5. I would say than it is definitely stouter than the regular 725. Made it that way on purpose. I mean, because a lot of guys are going to pitch with that rod too, and I just felt like it needed a little bit more power. I have a love affair with that rod. I fish that rod all the time. It's just a great rod. It's still got a great tip for casting, but it has got a lot of power too. And it is more powerful than a 725. And that's the kind of things we can tell guys when they call. I mean, we know that. And there's stories behind rods like, a rod that I built, the 763 Champion was originally built for the guys on Diamond Valley in Southern California, which is a super clear lake, really super high pressure. It's in LA. I mean, it's unbelievable pressure on that lake. And these guys were Carolina rigging with 6-pound tests, and they were breaking fish off. And so they wanted a rod that they could swing on and would fish and Carolina rig 6-pound tests, which nobody will do anywhere else in the country probably. But that's why I made the 763. Now it gets used for a lot of other stuff. People have their own likes, and they'll, I have a bunch of guys that throw spinnerbaits on it. I wouldn't, but I have a lot of guys that do. But that's the reason that 763 then came about, was a Diamond Valley, Carolina rig rod. Crazy. I mean, but nobody really knows those stories, but me and the guys in the shop that have heard me talk about it. And but we can dial. That's why I encourage guys, call us. We'll do our best to help you, and we're pretty good at it because we do it all the time.
A couple of questions about any new tackle, any jigs, any. I know you guys got spinnerbaits and football jigs and a few other things. Anything in the works there?
I haven't done anything, honestly. The one thing that I would like to do, and I don't know if I'll ever do it, I'd like to make a good swim jig. I've thought about doing that a lot, and I just haven't done it. But that's the main thing. I mean, there's so many crankbaits on the market. There's so many jerkbaits on the market, and I just don't really want to get into that kind of stuff. And truthfully, most of the baits that I've made, it's something to fix something like, my football heads. I mean, I like a football head with a 604 Gamakatsu jig hook in it. You can really buy them that way. That Gamakatsu jig hook is just totally badass. They call it a heavy hook, but it's not a heavy hook. But it's not going to spring on you if you hit bone either. But it's not a heavy hook. I even, in my own little open hook dart heads, I pour it's a 60412. That's a 2-aught in a dart head. And, I'm only throwing it on an 8-pound test line. It's not a heavy hook. But I was just adamant about that. So when I built the jigs, I mean, that was the first jig I built. I put that 604 hook in it. I recessed down inside that lead head, the fiber guard, because a lot of jigs you press on the fiber guard and they break out. So I recessed it all the way to that hook shank. And then I put a 3mm collar above that. So you've got a lot of lead to hold that fiber guard in place. And then I put a 4-barb system for the bait to hold the bait keepers up there so they don't freaking slide down when you're fishing. Just stupid little stuff like that. But all the baits that I made basically for me, for my fishing, the way that I fished. Even that stupid little bitty nail weight, it's a dumb little nail weight, but it doesn't slide out. It's short, where a lot of those nail weights are so long, you run them into a Cinco, you made that whole part of that Cinco rigid. There's no action. So my nail weights are short, but they've got a little ball of lead there, which is always on the bottom. The fish ain't never going to see it, and they wouldn't care if they did see it. And it's a dumb little nail weight. I think it's the best one out there. I mean, I fixed what I thought was a problem that that nobody was covering, and that's what I did with the baits. And so we're really a rod company, and that's our strength. But and we sell enough baits to do it, but we don't really push them. The spinnerbait. I mean, I won so much money either on a spinnerbait or a jerkbait. It was unreal. And the spinnerbaits, you slow roll the spinnerbait in, and the skirt material is all balled up around the head. You don't know that till you slow roll that bait all the way in. You realize it was a wasted cast. Drove me crazy. So I made a head design where basically that silicone rubber is going to slide off of that head when you're throwing it. It's got a welded eye on it. I know we've all thrown blades off our spinnerbaits. Drives me crazy. It's got a welded eye on it. It's got obviously a high quality wire. It's got a big hook in it. It's also got stainless steel blades. I wanted to build the best spinnerbait, and to my knowledge, outside of a Japan spinnerbaits, no one ever uses a stainless steel blade. And I had to have them made, so I stamped Dobyns into it just where they couldn't sell it to somebody else after I had the thing made. But they're so light, they spin super, super fast. It's an unbelievable amount of flash in clear water. But just little things like that. I mean, I tried to make them the absolute best that we could. And if you look at that spinnerbait, it's perfectly balanced. Every single strand is tied side to side to side to side all the way around that. There's not two strands that are balled over the top. There's a one lady that ties them. I don't know how she ties 300 a day. I don't know how the heck she does it. But every single strand is singular all the way around that spinnerbait. It is 100% perfectly balanced. And just stuff like that. But I don't think there's a better spinnerbait on the market. I really don't. I tried to build the best. If I was going to build it, I was building it basically for me, and I wanted to build the best that I could. We sell enough to keep them, but we don't sell a lot of baits.
I think the swim bait heads, those double barbs, are completely underrated. They hold K-Tech little soft swimmers really well.
Yeah, I tell everybody don't, put it on there straight, because you're going to rip it if you have to pull it back off, but it's not going to slide off on you. And all the time, like throwing, I threw a lot of A rigs. You had to either super glue them up the night before, or you make a cast, you got to slide this K-Tex back up on there. And that swim bait head, dude, they're not going to slide. I mean, that head holds those baits up there perfect. There's no more super glue. You just need to put them on straight when you rig them to start with. I love the swim bait heads. We make them both with weed guard and without weed guard. We make them with heavy hook, with a light wire hook for like the A-rigs and stuff. So we have a swim bait head for just about all applications. We even put an extra long hook in there for the guys like on the California Delta throwing bigger swim baits for stripers. So we made one with an extra long hook in it. We do sell a lot of swim bait heads.
Ryan Thiel looking for a Carolina rig rod recommendation in the Fury or Kaden.
I'd love to talk him into a Champ 764, to be totally honest with you. But in a Kaden, you'd probably have to go like probably a 744. I just like the action on that 764 Champion. The first rod we ever ran out of when I started the rod company was a 764. It's not like a super high seller, but the guys that fish that rod, they'll have 2 or 3 of them in their boat. I mean, it's really, really a good rod.
Wants to know, how many original Stacy 90s do you still have? And do you keep any of your old trophy baits in like a cabinet or a box like that you?
Um, I have not built a cabinet or a box like that, but I'll be honest with you, my father passed away in December 17th of last year, not this year, but the year before. And I have some of his old baits, and I've got some of my, older, Lucky Craft signature baits that I'm saving. And one day I have them put aside. I'm going to put all of them in a box. And, but I have quite a few. That Stacy 90 was, guys will just get in tune with the bait. And I'm just in tune with that bait. I just catch so many fish on. It's just unbelievable. And, I did that thing with Lucky Craft. They called it a version 3, and basically all it was a little bit weighted, just a little bit different, and it had number 4 hooks on it instead of number 5s on it. And gosh, I just seem to catch a lot more fish. And when you're working that bait slow, because it would ever so slowly sink. I mean, I don't mean like this. I mean ever so slowly. So on a long cast, I'd work that bait in. I was getting that bait down like 10 feet. And a regular Stacy getting down like 5 and 6, so it was just a big deal. And we sold a lot. I mean, I have guys ask about that bait all the time. And I created that Phantom Tortue Shad color, which is just, oh my God, it's just an unbelievable color. And they still use it. Um, but I love the Stacy's. I had around. I threw the baby shad for a long time. That was a really good bait. I caught a lot of fish on the baby shad. Even the Pointer 78. I caught a lot of fish on that real small bait. But the Stacy 90 was always my go-to. That and the Vision 110 or 110 plus one. I really haven't played around with the plus twos and stuff because after I messed my shoulder up, I just haven't really been throwing a lot of those jerk baits.
What spinning rod do people like for spy baits?
Light, something light, 1 powers. It I got to tell you, that has got to be the one bait that's probably the most frustrating bait for me because that is a bait I just don't catch fish on. And I know it, I know guys do, and I don't. And I'm gonna find something else to fish. Me and that bait, we've never clicked. I don't know what I do wrong with it, but I just don't catch fish on that spy bait. And I really haven't heard a lot about that bait lately. So I don't know if it's just died down or the guys that are catching them are just keeping their lips closed on it or what. But I've not really been hearing a lot about spy baits lately.
Ryan, channel member, wants to know how's the partnership with Omnia been going?
Good, great dealer, great people. Absolutely phenomenal dealer. Customer service is awesome. I mean, I can't say enough good about them. I mean, they do a great job. Great job. Great people to deal with. They pay their bills. I mean, they just, like I said, across the board, A plus. I don't have anything but the highest regard for that company. They do a great job.
Cool. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that watch this show that purchase a fair amount of their Dobyns rods through Omnia. So
Yeah, and I tell you, they take really good care of. I mean, a bunch of my guys in the shop. I mean, they order a lot of stuff from Omnia. They take really good care of them. It's a great company.
it's an interesting question. How did you and Buka become buddies?
Gosh, how did that happen? I don't really know. I mean, I don't know. I think I might have met him through Nature's Tackle Box in Georgia, possibly. I really don't know. We've been buddies for a long time. And Christy at Nature's Tackle Box might have introduced us. I don't really know, but Book is just one of those guys. We both kind of had a similar background. As I worked a night shift in a cable plant, making I was a made manufacturer with underground cable and stuff. I worked nights, and Mike was a night worker too. In retail, and it's he started the bull shed, and he's done very, very well with it. He's a great guy. Does a really good job of promotions and selling baits, and the rod company's been a very fortunate deal with me. And we just two guys that work night shift and love to fish, and we just got so much in common. You know, we're both a little on the fat side. I'd always tell Mike's a lot fatter than me, but the sucker went on a diet now and he's lost a bunch of weight. And he's a great guy. He's just one of those guys that, you know, even if I don't talk to Mike for quite a while, when I see him, you know, it's just like we were buddies yesterday. He's just a great guy. And, you know, we trash talk everybody. We trash talk each other horribly. You know, people think that, you know, we don't like each other at times. You know, some of my comments, I had to learn to put smiley faces behind my comments to Buka, so people would know that I was joking, because otherwise they think, man, Gary's an ass to Buka. You know, he's just an ass. And Mike knows. I mean, I don't have to put smiley faces for Mike. I mean, he knows, but he does the same thing back to me. You know, he's just a great guy, absolutely great guy. Builds great baits, runs a great company, personable, good fisherman. You know, just a great guy.
I've definitely chatted with him online and things before, but at Knoxville at the Classic, I was able to meet him in person, shake his hand, and chat with him for a few minutes. Obviously, his booth with his trick shed coming out was overrun, so we didn't. You know, he had to get to. I mean, I bought a couple swim baits, but there was people with fistfuls of $100 bills trying to get swim baits, so I had to get out of the way. But he's a good dude.
He is. He really is. Mike's like this great guy, and we just kind of grew up in similar backgrounds. Where I got really more into the tournaments, where he got more into catching the big fish. But working nights, man. For anybody that's had to work the night shift, it's a life changer. I mean, you just learn to operate by being tired. It's just, you know, our bodies just aren't made to be awake all night long, and it's tough. It's tough on families. It's just tough on your body. It's just different. I did that for a lot of years. Mike did it for a lot of years. You know, I'm happy that he's doing so well with his company. Like I said, he's a great guy. He's a great friend. Just don't tell him I said anything good about him. I'd hate for that to get back to him.
Well, that's the great thing, is like he can't hear, so he'll never hear this. So
that's true. You know, one thing, I got to tell a quick story on Mike. One time we're talking on the phone. This is early on. I'm talking to him on the phone, and all of a sudden I just realized that there was something that just clicked, and like, his wife is on this phone. And, you know, when, you know, us guys, when we get to talking, my language was not good. Okay. You know, when you work in a night shift with 160 men, or in your military or whatever, you turn to get a little bit of a garbage mouth, and I have one. I try to watch it, but when I'm with my buddies, I just talk. Right? Well, I'm talking to Mike, and all of a sudden I realized his wife. I was talking to his wife, and she was typing out the answers really quick, and he was answering. We were talking back and forth like that, and I was never so embarrassed in my life. I said, "Mike, is your wife on this phone?" And she said, "Yeah, Gary, hi." I'm telling you what, I guarantee you I was as red as a beet. And I told Mike, if you ever do that, you got to let me know, dude. I mean, and then I realized that you know, my hearing is horrible. Okay. I'm down like 70% in both ears, but Mike's, you know, I mean, Mike is like 99% down in both ears. But I was never so embarrassed in my life when I'm sitting there talking to the guy trash talk, and realized that his wife was the one that was hearing all of this. It was terrible. And then she's like, "Oh, I'm used to it. I'm used to you bass fishermen." It was really bad.
I was gonna say, if that's
really
common
bad.
practice where if she has to type out, then I'm sure
Yeah.
she's heard worse. Yeah.
Oh yeah, she has. I mean, dude, I tell you what, that's one of the cool things about fishing. I mean, like, gosh dang, in the morning before blast off, it's like, "I'm kicking your ass today. You're going down. You guys must load that boat right now." Blah blah blah. You know, all that trash talk, dude. That's one of the best things. The morning before blast off, all the loudmouth trash talk. You know, buddies going at it. It's freaking awesome.
I believe you guys have made a business decision not to display or expo at classics and things like that. Is there any plans to change that at Tulsa?
Doubt it. I tell you, bass burned me really bad in the last show I did, and I was pissed about it. And I'll be happier than heck to talk about it. They put us on the third floor in a room. There was 5 booths total in that room, and we had no traffic at all. There was no signage. There was no nothing. And when I talked to them, when I seen it, because we always signed up for the Classic. We were one of the very first companies signed up every year. When it came out, we immediately signed up. And they used to give you like 4 or 5 locations. You were not guaranteed anything, but you could pick 4 or 5 locations and they'd try to give you one of them, which we rarely ever got. But this time they put us on a 3rd floor, which no one even knew it existed. We didn't see 30 people through the whole show. And I was pissed about it. And they had the questionnaires come out. I answered them. They said, you want someone to call you from Bass? I said, yep, I never heard a thing. And I am still to this day pissed about it. And until they give me a phone call and they make it right, I will never display in the Bassmasters Classic ever again. I mean, I'm that pissed about it still. And that's been 4 or 5 years ago. And I just won't do it. I won't do it. I mean, I just won't do it. I mean, they as far as I'm concerned, they completely screwed us over. There was 5 booths in a conference room upstairs in the back end of a corner. No one even knew we were there. And it was just wrong. And I live my life on rights, and wrongs, and that was wrong. And then and when I talked to them about it, they told me there was an entrance there. Well, I mean, how's there going to be an entrance on the 3rd floor? Okay. But they guaranteed me there was an entrance there. Well, I couldn't see it on the map because there wasn't one there. That's why I couldn't see it. So yeah, I mean, I don't care if BASS is listening right now. I don't give a damn. I will never display in that show again until someone calls me and makes it right. So that's the asshole side of Gary.
Yeah. You gotta have principles.
It is, dude. I mean, we supported that show forever. We never missed. It was a great show for us. We sold a lot of rods. It was great. I still go sometimes, but I will not display in that show until someone calls me and makes it right. I just won't do it.
You might walk around.
Yep, I'll walk around. I love to go to the shows because I love seeing the fishermen. And I will tell you, I never walk past the guy that's wearing a Dobyns hat and I don't walk over and shake his hand and tell him thank you. I do it every single time. And I love doing that. I love seeing the anglers and talking to the anglers and stuff. I just, and being tied down to a booth it sucks too, really. You're standing in one place. You get to see a lot of people, but I really like to walk the floor and see the anglers. Like I said, anyone wearing one of my hats or jerseys or something, I stop every single one of them and I talk to them for a few minutes and thank them. And actually, a lot of times I'm carrying a business card and I'll write a little something on it for them, and they might even get a deal on the rod next time they call in. Just my little way of saying thank you for wearing a hat around in there, and we do good with that. And I probably should apologize to everybody for going off on Bass like that, but guys, it really pissed me off, and I just don't hide something that pisses me off, and they piss me off. So, but I probably should apologize to everybody. I'm really not an asshole, but I feel like they really wronged me. And the fact they sent the questionnaires out, and I filled the questionnaires out, and they said, would you like somebody to call you on? And I said, yes, I would. And nothing. So I just won't support them. So I apologize if I offended anybody with that. It's just the truth.
All right. Drop shotting with a casting rod in the Kaden lineup.
One more time. Drop shot and casting rod? Kaden. Oh my gosh, you guys are making me really struggle with this. It'd be the lightest, I would say the lightest action casting rod would be
713, I guess.
I think that is, because I don't make a 2-power in that. It would be the 713. You'd be in the Kaden series. That's probably what it'd be. You might be better off jumping in the Sierra series with like a 682. That's a really good cast and drop shot rod, and it's same price. I mean, no one really should have a Kaden series and a Sierra series at the same price point. I mean, it's marketing wise, it's got to be one of the dumbest things in the world, but each series has such a great following. When I made the Kaden series, I was going to do away with the Sierra series. I was just going to do away with it and was going to come out with the Kaden series. And I did that test deal with the Kadens. and the response was so good. But then all of a sudden, the Sierras just really took off super strong. And prior to the Sierra, we had the Savvy series, which is very, very similar, blank, different graphics and whatnot. We changed from the Savvy series, which had Keegan guides, and we went to the Sierra series with Fuji guides because, I mean, truthfully, we were having some problems with our Keegan guides, and I just got away from them with the inserts. And that was the main change. But then the Sierra took off, the Kaden takes off. You know, the Kaden's mostly full handles, the Sierra's mostly split handles, a little bit different actions, but very similar. And we sell a lot of both of them. And if I had to discontinue one, I don't even know which one it would be because they both are very strong for us. And it's it's a great price point when you get that 169, 179 range for a really good rod. I mean, for the money, for the quality of the product and for the money, I think probably Sierra is the best deal on the market. I mean, the best deal within our company is for what you get for what you spend.
I don't know. I love them. I got a couple of them. Love them for spinner baits, chatter baits, that type of stuff. It just even like a 735 for the big ploppers, just that little bit slower response is good for that kind of baits, and it's nice to have a couple in your arsenal that you can have a little more versatility.
Just a hair slower than the Cadence, the Caden's got a great following. The Sierra's got a great following, and so I mean, it's like I said, it's got to be the dumbest thing in the world to have two series of rods at the same price point. But I don't know how to fix that problem. So we just keep both of them.
It's interesting. Mike Christian, is there a lake you've never fished that's on your bucket list, or maybe a region or an area?
Oh man, that's a tough one. You know, I tell you what, I got to say got to be that door shack up there in Idaho with those big smallies. I mean,
sure.
That place it looks exactly like the California's Bullard's Bar with the big spots in it. And it's got kokanee and Bullard's, it's got kokanee and door shack, and I've never been on it, but just the pictures of it, I mean, it looks identical to Bullard's Bar. I'd love to go up and fish that place. Catch 8-pound smallmouth, pretty special.
Tell Gary that HellaBass crashed the website. I don't think that's true, Gator's Adventure, but thanks.
And that lake's no secret anymore. It's got a lot of press lately. People know that Door Shack's the real deal.
I think AJ's asking a loaded question here, but he wants to know why the Champ 736 is far superior to the 735 as a frog rod.
Got a lot more power. I mean, it's got a lot more power. It's just there. I mean, that's two rods that I cannot do without is the 35 and the 36. But for throwing frogs, the 36 is just a deal because I don't care how heavy that cover is. I mean, that's the rod to get them out of it. And it's so well balanced. So is a 35 too. But the 36 is just such a powerhouse rod to be able to feel that light in your hands and that well balanced. It's just that's a rod I would really hate to have to redesign and make again because I don't think I could ever make it that good again. I really don't. That's the reason it's my all-time favorite rod. It just has limited applications. I mean, it's basically a pitch and stick and a frog rod. I mean, that's basically what it is.
Dustin says he frogs a lot. He's got two of each.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with that guy. That's exactly the way I almost always have two of each of those in my boat. Almost always.
I guess we would be remiss if we didn't talk about throwing a weightless Senko. So I would assume we're talking a Texas rigged weightless Senko. What's your favorite rod for that?
Well, you know, the thing about it is it's going to be how much cover I'm fishing it in. And most of the time I'm pitching that bait. That's me. I'm pitching it. So I'm usually throwing it on a casting rod. And like if I'm fishing in the California Delta, I'm throwing on a 35 or a 36. If I'm fishing like Oroville or Shasta or one of these pretty clean reservoirs, a lot of guys are going to throw it on a spinning rod. I don't. I still throw it on a casting rod, especially if I'm Texas rigging it. I will tell you that wacky rigging it with an O-ring, though, it gets more bites than Texas rigging it. I mean, if you can do it, but you need there's weed guards, there's hooks with weed guards out, but most of them are not very good. You lose a lot of fish with them. But if you're using an open hook like that split shot drop shot hook by Gammy, and you're open casting it, I throw it on a 3-power spinning rod. But the longest one I had in my hand was a 753 Ecstasy or 733 Champion. It's just, but most of the time when I'm doing that, we're only throwing like 8-pound tests, maybe 10, but mostly like 8 and a 3-power spinning rod. But if you're fishing it like Texas rig, like in a Delta, dude, I'm going to throw a powerful rod. I'm pitching it. And those rods have enough tip to pitch. You can pitch them really, really well. And my favorite for pitching for largemouth, whether it's Lake Fork, California Delta, wherever, I like the 6-inch or the 7-inch the best, especially the 6. The 6 is just a perfect size. It just sucks because you get 5 of them in a package, and we all know Senkos, you're going to get a lot of times you're going to get a bite and you're going to go through that bait. But the 6-inch Senko is just a phenomenal bait.
You mostly Texas rig, or do you like the wacky the 6-inch too?
I like the if I'm fishing cover where I usually throw that, I like to Texas rig it, where I can pitch it literally into anything and get it right back out. I'll tell you, Senko's a crazy bait because you can, I tell you, it's got to be about the best punching bait that I've ever used, and nobody punches that. And I'll tell you a quick story, and I think I probably told this before, but I was fishing with Fred Roumbanis, and he was fixing his all of his big punch weight and his big trailers and all that stuff. And I just rigged up the Senko, and he goes, "What are you doing? You can't punch with that." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I can." Where he was punching with like a 2 1/4 ounce to get through the mats and stuff, and I was using a 1 ounce to get right through the same thing. Because if you think about that Senko, there's nothing to grab anything. You got a weight on the end of it. That weight goes through. That bait just follows it straight down through. And those fish don't. It's a reaction bite completely. They don't look nothing. They eat it. It's on the fall and they eat it. And I tell you what, it didn't take long before I had old Freddie telling me that you couldn't use a Senko. So me and Freddie, we went through 100 bags of Senkos that day. We caught the crap out of them. You can't fish a Senko wrong. You can wacky it. You can Texas rig it. You can punch with it. It's just you could do anything with it. But I tell you, it's overlooked as a punch bait. And now that I said that, you try it, and I promise you'll see it. And again, I like a 6-inch. I also like to use the monster, like a 5/0, the monster 5/0 EWG Gamakatsu, because it's got a longer shank at the front, so it goes down into bait. So you hook it down into the bait a little bit farther. Phenomenal, best hook ever for it. 5/0, nice. 5/0 monster EWG.
Yeah, I've actually done not like punching, but like especially on a new lake where I don't really know the grass that well. Like instead of like flipping like a 3/4 or 1 ounce jig or a tube craw or something like that, I can go and just rig up like a Senko, a 5-inch Senko, and like a 3/8 ounce weight, and get the same fall rate.
Yeah.
And a 5-inch Senko is so unobtrusive; it's just going to get you bites. You're not gonna fish over fish.
No.
So it's a really good way to cover a ton of water and search them out super fast.
Yeah, I don't fish any of the smaller ones. They make some smaller ones, but I just don't see any need to throw a 4-inch Senko. That 5, I throw 5, 6, and 7, and I'm going to say I throw probably 5% 7, and the rest of it split evenly between a 5 and a 6-inch. They're just great baits.
To me, the 3 and 4-inch they're drop shot baits. They're not the same.
Yeah. I just don't do that. Just not. I know it works. It's just something I don't do. Everybody kind of gets hung up in their own way of fishing, and I just don't. I'm just not really a big drop shotter unless I'm pitching a drop shot. I do a lot of that. That's a way to catch big fish, pitching a drop shot around stuff. It's unreal. But again, rebarb hook that you can rig it weedless so you can throw it anywhere you want.
Have you ever been ice fishing?
Never. Never. Not that I've never had the opportunity. I'd do it in a minute, but I've just never had the opportunity.
Live to Minneapolis, hop in with Sobe.
Yeah. I've just never done it.
All right. Sean has asked this question many times, and I keep scrolling by because I have no idea what a solid tip is for a rod, for a
Yep.
spinning rod.
Mhm.
But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the cool thing of the solid tip is they're a lot that tip is strong. If you do tubular and you get that smaller diameter, you can get breakage. But when you do a solid carbon tip, or some people use a solid glass tip, just like your ice rods, they're solid. It's the same thing. And we make what we call a STP, which is Sierra Trout and Panfish rod. And I've got a solid carbon tip that slides down into that tubular, and then we wrap it. So it's really a super small. I started off with a 1 millimeter diameter, and we breaking some of them. So I jumped into a 1.2 millimeters, just thicken it up a little bit. It casts really good. It's super sensitive. You can't pick up against a fish and not feel it. I mean, it's just unreal. But that's what we're talking about when we talk about the solid tips. I'm sure other people are using them. I haven't seen it. I just building a really light action rod. That thing is it's pretty cool. We build a whole series of STPs, and I've got solid carbon tips stuck in them.
Yeah, I guess I think he's wondering if that's ever going to be, for other. I guess maybe it's in the Sierra. So I guess you see it expanding beyond that Sierra, or that's where it's going to live, or.
It's in the Sierra. I'll be honest with you. It's funny you asked that because I just rigged one about an hour before we did this show. I just rigged one for a crappie rod because I want to test that thing out on crappie. I got a little lake here just north of me here in California that's getting ready to go out. Dude, I tell you, this crappie trip I just went on was a kick in the butt. I mean, God dang, it was fun. And you just get so many bites, get so many fish, and I got a little lake here north of me that's got a lot of big crappie in it. And I rigged up one of those STPs today with 6-pound test line. And that wind's been blowing here brutal, 30, 35 miles an hour. If it slows down tomorrow, my fat butt's going to be out there crappie fishing. I'll catch a bunch of bass too, but I'm going to go crappie fishing.
Since we're talking crappies, the doc wants to know, you're testing out some new crappie rods. How do they differ from the STP series?
Well, the ones that I made are tubular, so they don't have the solid carbon tips. And I worked with an angler named Eric Cagle, and he's a professional crappie guide. I mean, the guy guides over 300 days a year. He's phenomenal, and that's who I just fished 4 days with. And we were hitting 2 and 3 different bodies of water. I mean, in all honesty, guys, we were shooting videos on all of them. And if anybody follows the Popsky YouTube deal, Chris Schaefer pretty much runs Potsky. I've known Chris. He's been an outdoor rider forever. He's a good friend of mine, even though we kind of lost touch for about 15, 20 years. He called me up one day and said, "Hey, will you build Eric some rods?" And I'm like, "Yeah, heck." Chris is a great guy, great promoter, does a great job with Potsky. And we just shot a whole bunch of crappie videos with Eric and these new rods. And, the rods were pretty much already tested, but we went ahead and put them through the testing anyway, and boat flipping 2.5-pound crappie. And it was a kick in the butt, but we caught a lot of fish. And Eric wanted a 6-footer and a 7-footer. Most of the crappie rods on the market are cheap. And he wanted some good quality rods where his clients can really feel the bites, because he's not a long rod guy. He's a spin cast guy. He casts to the fish. It's just a lot more fun. It's a really light rod, 6-pound test, 16,000 jig. We did those some 8s at times, and we're having to fish like 30 feet deep. But we did a whole bunch of videos. There's gonna be a bunch of videos coming out. It'll show the rods, and so I made what we call the EC special for Eric Cagle special, just a signature series rods. He wanted a really short handle on them, which is that was the hardest thing for me to do, is go ahead and adapt and build as short as handle as he wanted on the rods. But after using them and fishing the way he does, I see exactly why he wanted to do it that way. But they're and we actually we've got so many guys calling in after a couple of videos hit that we actually put a pre-order up on our website today. You know, just for guys get pre-orders. We got so many guys because Eric will sell a lot of rods for us. I mean, like I said, he guides 300 plus days a year. It's crazy. Heck of a
My
fisherman.
dad has gone to become more of a crappie fisherman these days, and he lives down on Falcon in the wintertime. And I bought him. I think I got two different ones for him and my mom in the trout and panfish, and they love them for pitching into bushes and around stuff down in Falcon. And he says they go with their buddies, and they miss. They're getting bites and feeling bites that their friends just completely go undetected and just
Yeah. It's,
have a
crappie
riot.
fishing. I mean, I've crappie fished, on and off through my life, but I've never really got serious about it. We go crappie fishing a couple, once every couple years. But dude, I tell you what, I had so much fun 4 days fishing with Eric and on a whole bunch of different bodies of water that neither one of us had ever been on. And that's kind of cool too. When we got to go out, we got to find them. We got to catch them. Of course, I'm in the boat with one of the best crappie guides. Him and Josh Jones are two of the best crappie fishermen that I know of. Josh just really likes to long pole everything, and Eric likes to spin cast everything. And it was just fun. I mean, it really just kind of got the fishing bug in me really, really bad. It hadn't been blowing 30 miles an hour today, I'd have been fishing.
Well, it's good to see you still got that fire to get after them. Well, we've hit the 3-hour mark. We covered a lot of ground. I think we've kind of caught up on questions. Most of the ones that I've got started seem like we've kind of touched on for the most part. If you didn't get your question answered, you can always call the shop. We've done 2 other these. They've always been like my highest replay videos. So there's a couple other 2-3 hour fish and rod sessions with Gary that you can go back and binge into as well if you haven't caught those. But really had a good time tonight, Gary. Thanks for coming on and sharing so many stories.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it, and hope everybody has a great year of fishing this year. I think this is still going to be a little bit down year in the economy wise and stuff, but so a lot of guys aren't buying as many rods as normal. But just get out and get their fishing, get them kids fishing, and I'm always happy to be on here, Rich. All you got to do is yell at me.
Absolutely. Well, we got to. I think we skipped 1 year. We got to make sure we don't skip a year. But yeah, it's been awesome as usual. If you guys came in late, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or the MP3, go back and listen to it again. There's tons of good nuggets, and people always comment how much they love listening to these conversations. So through the Omnia code up at the bottom, in case you want to use that on a rod, I do got links to the Omnia Dobyns section down in the video description. Good places to check out. Otherwise, you can call the shop. You can go on the Dobyns website as well. If you want to type HellaBass sent you in the comments or tell Bryce that I sent you, that doesn't hurt. So,
Guys, thanks again. Thanks for having me, Rich. Thanks to all you guys for all the great customers and all the great feedback. And we really, really do appreciate you. Just a fisherman selling fishing rods. You guys have a great day and have a happy new year.
all right. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.